Chapter 37. Kirke Register. Church Register of the East Koshkonong, West Koshkonong and Liberty Prairie congregations as constituted during the years of Reverend J.W.C. Dietrichson's incumbency of the pastorate from 1844 to 1850, and as recorded by Reverend Dietrichson. Invandried Fotkones, Navenbygd Naven RR Og Fodsilsar. Ole Knudsen Travet Laudel 1807, Gunnel Olsen Vindig Rolog, 1808 Guri. 1811 Ole. 1842, Gudbrand Gudbrandsen Holten Flesberg Torkild Gunliksen, Sunbo Sillijord 1816 Margit Torstein Thronsen Selsang, Sogendal Kari John Pedersen Tverberg Tind, 1811, Gro Nud Mortensen, Roland Mikkel Johnson and Jessider Leginger, 1819 Sineva. 1822 Niels Olsen Smetbeck, Rolog Barbro Gile Helgesen Venaz, Rolog Sonder Olsen Reishis Sillijord 1820, Even Stenerson Bilstead Mo 1802, Dagny Johans Johnson Berg Krejero Gunder Jorgensen Fladland H. Vidso Bjorn Gulbrandsen Morkvald Roland Ispjor Gulbrand, Haver Johnson Gravand Nissendal Gunhild, Gott Ingebretsen Gulliksred, Tind 1815 Kari Niels Kolbeinsen Fladland H. Vitz, Hans Pettersen. Tverberg Tind 1814 Ingeborg, 1820 Petter. 1845, Amund Andersen Stavanger Ingeborg Anfinn Anfinsen Hodgerud Rolog, Nud Olsen Holtin H. Vidse, Kirkesanger Mikkel Hansen Stramen H. Vidse, Einen Tolefsen Bolsted G. Jerpen Barold Johnson Strandskugen Derdad Kari Christine Os Helene. Helge Marie Nud Aslaxen G. Jodel Laudel, 1803 Thone 1816 Niels Torstensen, Sime Lairdal 1812, Mary and Jelleif, Torsten. Britha Christen Olsen Hol Voss 1813 Tolef, Olsen Kos Laudel Johans, Johnson Berge Laudel, 1791, Birgit Elef Andersen Berg Sansverd Tolef Johannessen Berge Laudel, 1814 Jens, Pedersen Vehis Rolog, 1814, Nud Osmundsen Dahl Sillijord Vettel Osmundsen Dahl Sillijord Richard Bjornson Rockjan Vinge 1816, Nud Aslaxen Juve H. Fitz, 1799 Gudge. 1802, Haver Paulsen Gravum Nissedal Even Eilertsen Buas Kradro, 1799, Bjorn Olsen Ram Kradro, Helik Gundersen, Vashavt Flesberg Marith Petter Larsen Svartskor, Edger Gro Marth Murray. Gret Sophie Thor Knudsen, Nor Rolog G. Gertrud Nud Kittelsen Bagley Flesberg Ole Ellingsen Fladland Sogndal Petter Kittelsen Byastolen, Voss Tov Kittelsen Esvimbel Tind, 1801 Sigrid. 1800 Kittel 1833. Ole, Gunhild 1843, John Haverson Gravum Nissedal Ole Pedersen Selsang, Sogndal Terald Elefsen, Midbo Holt Ann Ole Helgesen Leon Rolog, Thury Barbro Larstatter, her child. Ole Lars Johannessen Hollow Hedemarken 1839 Marie Frederick, Martin. Anders Gunstein Rolfsen Omdal Moland, Odny Osmundsen Bondal Moland, Haver Larsen Stalsbraten Rolog, 1820, G. Germund Knudsen Sund Rolog, 1812. Ole Knudsen H. Gemdal Laudel, 1799. Gunder Gundersen Vashavt Flesberg Kirsti Ole Torgersen Bergland, Mo Nud Ellingsen Dockneys, Holt Christen Lassesen Mellaz, Sogndal 1799 Os. 1803, Petter Larsen Hollow Ringsiger Stenner Evensen Bilstead Mo 1828, Haver Aslaxen Kostvet, Vinge Sigrid Aslak, 1845. Ole Lorentzen Hogndalen Sillijord 1807, John Haverson Vinlos Laudel Even Jorgensen Euelen Laudel Osmund Aslaxen Niestestu, Vinge 1797, Hermund Endresen Hugh Leginger, 1811 Kirsti Endre. Lars Neri Tarjason Hodge H. Vidso Petter Larsen G. Gerd Leginger, 1797, Haver Lorentzen Foshem Sillijord 1810, Aslak Olsen G. Jurgjord H. Vids, Ole Iverson Husebo Leginger 1808 in Jelliv, 1805, Anna 1833, G. Gertrud 1837, Lars 1840. Iver 1844, Lars Larsen Hollow Ringsiger Gumjer, Ole Knudsen Dealand, Sillijord 1819, Kittel Kittelsen Reinden Moland, 1791. Ole Sandesen Briken Vinge Estersen Earlman Sogndal 1816 Gottskjalk Oddmundsen Melland, Voss 1806, Thone Aslakstatter Leon Laudel 1807, Anna Larstatter Egum Leginger. 1811. Widow. One child, Anna Stephen Knudsen Gilderhus Voss 1813 Anne. 1806 Elling Olsen Fladland Sogndal Nud Anundsen, Jamskard Vinge John Osmundsen, Subbo Henrik Olsen Heave, Voss 1800 Burge 1833, Reinert Andreas Gunsteinsen Moland Clement Larsen Stalsbrat, Madam Johans Larsen Hollow Ringsaker, 1822 Andrine Ingeborg Alstatter Traven. In Kelaadel 1843, Ole Herbrandsson Morkvald Rolog Aslak Evensen Groven Laudel, 1802, Bjorn Olsen Hustvedt, Vinge Amund Olsen Jordet Moland, 1816 Tolef Kittelsen Reinden Moland, 1826, Gunder Kittelsen Reinden Moland, 1823, Ole Andersen Verken Leginger, 1823, Osmund Vettelsen Dahl Sillijord Herbrand Tolefsen. Morkvald Rolog Nud Helixen Ro Tind, Ann Ole Larsen Stromi, Voss 1796 Anand Olsen Drottening, Vinge 1819 Lisbeth Gunleg Johnson Hodgley H. Vids, Aslak Bjornson Rockjan Vinge 1826, Thron Havorsen G. Jodel Laudel, 1819, Ole Aslaksen Rorge Laudel Gunhild, Abraham Knudsen Roningen, Kradro, Ingeborg Nud Erik Knudsen Roningen Kradro, Haver Eilertsen Dahl Kradro and Eilert. Alaus. Carl Niels Johnson Luras Tind 1789 Amber Havorsen Gravum Nissettle, 1814 Anders, Havorsen Gravum Nissettle 1824, Tarj Narason Hodge H. Fides, Ole Sorensen Quistred, Tind Nud Havorsen Taseberg Laudel, 1803, Thorbjorn Gudormsen Vig Sillijord Ole Gulbrandsen Holten Flesberg Niels, Olsen Gravum Nissettle, Nud Olsen Lee in Laudel, 1797 Ragnhild Haver. Johnson Donstead H. Fides, 1816 Torstein Gunlegson Bringa Sillijord 1817, Askjer Knudsen H. Gemdal. Pige John Olsen Hagen Nordrehag 1840 Harold Kittelsen Dahl Sillijord Haver Kittelsen Luras Tind, 1814 Jorand. 1815 Kittel 1840, Niels 1845. Ingeborg Lars Gunlegson Sunbo Sillijord 1829, Berit Levorstatter Bergered Flesberg Anders Andersen Fenvoss, Odny Bjornsen Lien H. Fidso, Bodolf Larsen Lundvoss, Nud Thorsen, Nor Rolog Aslaug Thorstetter Koss, Rolog Gulbrandsen Holten Flesberg Kittel Gulliksen, Bagley Flesberg Inbeborg Tolifstatter Mitlien Molen Telef, Gunhild. Thone Mons Simonsen Hafsrund, Vig Haver Danielsen Stensrud, San Bjorn Osmundsen Niestestu, Vinge Eigil Aslaksen, Leon Vinge Erik Henriksen, Heave Voss Ole Nielsen Gravum Nissettle Torsten Torstensen, Garden Tind Anna John Johnson Landsverk H. Gendal and Petter. John Omgang Skolarer. Kirkesanger Tolef, Sigurdsen Tivetten Laudel Jury Nudstetter Holtin H. Fides, Thierry Hermanstatter, F. Geristed Vig Martha Ellingstatter, Fladland Sogndal Ingeborg Haverstatter Hagedalen H. Fides, Anna Kristenstatter Mellas, Sogndal Martha Henrikstatter Heave, Vossislav Evenstatter Qualen Laudel, Guro Alstetter Stromi, Voss Sineva Alstetter Husebo Sogndal, 1831, Ingeborg Tarjesdatter Diedel Laudel, 1829 Ragnhild. Herbrandstatter Morkvald Rolog G. Gertrud Breinaldstatter, Sand Voss Nud Olsen H. Gemdal Laudel, Thorbjorn Gundersen Fladland H. Fides. Havernarason Hodge H. Fides, Isbjorn Evensen Qualen Laudel Kolbein Nielsen F. Geld by Voss Tolef Annison Bolsted G. Jerpen Ole Gundersen Bringen Sillijord 1830 Tarj Aslaksen Leon Mo Ole Henriksen Heave, Voss Gunhild Aslakstatter Giada Laudel, 1792, Christi Halstenstatter Vinge Voss. 1821, Nut Jarensen Bosbone Sillijord Ole Olsen Stoon, Sovd 1814 Aslan Aslak. Ole Gunver Johannesdatter Berge Laudel, 1822, Gunleg Torkeldsen, Sunbo Sillijord, 1785 Margit Gunder Olsen Skrabak Sillijord Ole Andersen Sanden Sillijord 1821, Kittel Tovsen Os Sillijord, Liv Petterstatter Bjan. In Kaasa Johannes Andersen Abo H. Husebo Ole Knudsen Gilderhus, Voss 1817, Martha Britha Lars Nilsson Vihul Voss 1803, Lars Torgersen wrote Voss 1819 in Jeborg. 1822 Torg 1845, Torstein Levorsen Bergered Flesberg Kirsti Lever, and Marie Haverstadter Thorsted. In Kjell 1809, Thor Olsen Koss Rolog, and Niels Larsen Bolsted Voss and Lars. In Jeborg Ole Estjerdsen Gilderhus Voss 1814 Ali Martha, 1845. Sivert 1845. Lars Davidson Rikve Voss 1818 in Jeborg Ole Larsen Digstein Voss Anna Niels, Cornelius Nielsen Tivet Sansverd, Anna Kirstine Osmund Osmundsen, Lund Vinge Niels Elefsen Mastered Bambla 1816, Varen Svensson Tivet Laudel, Even Olsen Unskard Hallingdal, 1843 Sigrid Ole. Mary Åshild Torgrimstatter Strand Moland, 1774, Anders Nielsen Grove Voss Borgilda Anders Halskusen Sanden Sillejord, Even Sorensen Bjalland Laudel Barbro Evenstatter Sanakdal, 1843, 1827, Eilert Evensen Bua Sanakdal 1843, 1829, Aslak Anundsen Juvit Laudel Barbro Thor. Thav. Thone Even Olsen Ramberg Vinge Gunhild Nielstatter Luras Tind, Aslau Nielstatter Luras Tind, Jacob Jarensen Bosbone Sillejord Gullek Torstensen, Saw Voss 1821, Donat Torgerstatter Ralj Voss 1820, Ole Knudsen Skjerdal Erland. San 1843, Ole Knudsen Trinjeklev Sillejord 1816, Nud Ingebrigtsen G. Gerd Sogndal Sineva, Ole Gunliksen Sunbo Sillejord 1819, Nud Olsen Asdaldalen Liar, 1821, Johans Christiansen Bjelda Sogndal Christi Hans 1000 Etterklip Rolog Lars Henriksen Leon Ness 1790 Jorand. 1787, Hallingdal. Met Larstetter Leon Ness 1823, Henrich Larsen Leon Ness 1826, Ole Halgesen Atribo H. Vidso Margit Johan. Anne Ingebrechtsen Nieswigs, Prestigild 1845, Johan John, Ingebrecht, G. Gertrud Gudv Nielstetter Droxvald, Enke. Voss Anders Ellingsen Oswigs, Prestigild 1840, 5 1810, Johans Jensen Nies Wig Eligens, Johannessen Nies Wig S. Ger Magnussen Cedar Vossmans, Lassesen Mellas, Sogndal 1787 Martha. 1796, Ole Andersen Mellas Sogndal 1812 Martha Mons 1840. Kari 1844, Birgit Johnstatter Leon Tind, Ingeborg Johnstatter Leon Tind Niels Nielsen Girl Niece. Christine Hallingdal 1845, 1817 Niels 1841, Mari, 1843, Ivor. 1840, 5, Ole Gulliksen Kjær Laudel G. Gertrud Alstetter Salebacka Rolog, 1822, Lass Estjersen Lillesand, Vig 1820, Nud Lavesen Aker Laudel, 1797, Lars Knudsen Aker Laudel, 1825, Wedel Torjusen Hotvet Laudel Birgit, Torjus Vedelsen Hotvet Laudel Osni Evenstatter, Ru Laudel Petter Monsen Loven San 1811 Johanna Jens. Torgersen Tarum San 1801, Torger 1844. Unni Ingeborg Alstetter Kammerfos Sanakdal Sarin Johannesdatter Hel Sanakdal, Birgith Petterstatter, T. Verberg Tind Hans Olsen Ashlaudel, 1819, Nud Larsen Bjalland Laudel Gunder Tolefsen Qval Laudel, 1823, Ivar Hansen Nies San, 1797, Anders Estjersen of Rebosan. 1799, Ann Lister Ole 1834, Andrine 1838. Christine 1840, 1 Ole Sivertsen Skotter Laudel, 1813, Haver Svenningsen Barstrak, Derdad Seen, Anne-Marie Kristenstatter, Derdad Thor Larsen Skerbo Sanakdal, 1830 Britha Hanstetter Quam Vig Ole Vedelsen Quallen Laudel, 1812 Anders Olsen Askslaudel Stenner, Haversen Junsas San Nut Erichsen Rockney, Voss 1820 Chursti, Ole Testensen Garden Tind Torbjorn Elefsen Scott Kradro. 1814 Anders Olsen Skalas Laudel, 1817. Aslak Olsen Midgarden Laudel, 1819 Anders Evensen Travetten Laudel Kittel Roleifsen Leguem Sand Liv Roleif, Torgheim Olsen Askj Laudel Ole Andersen Draxvald, Vas Ester Kolbeinsen Draxvald, Vas Jacob Thomsen, Asilijord Ole Tolefsen Qual Laudel, 1816, Gunder Torgesen Sundit, Mo Lars Elefsen Mastre Bamble Jens Elefsen. Mastre Bamble Nud Sorensen Quistred, Tind Gunald Kittelstatter Bort. In Kebo, 3 children. Klaus G. Germansen Trodredad Kittel Torjusen Bortbo Iver Ingebrechsen Itrali San, Frafleitet Johans, Olsen Finn Vig Ole Olsen Skrabek Silijord 1823. Nichols Haversen Asen Laudel, 1826, Anders Johnson Abo H. Vidso Kittel Kittelsen Stoemer, Bo 1815, Andreas Larsen Hollow Ringsaker Ole Anensen Buena Flesberg Helene, and 1846. Knudsen Gilderhus, Voss 1810, Johans Johannessen Minis, Wig Sigrid Ole Olsen Nies Wig Aslak Andersen, Abo H. Vides, Ole Pettersen Nies Wig Erich Evensen Hell Sanakdal, 1822, Nut Bent Nielsen Hell Sanakdal Tolef, Olsen Hotvet Laudel Petter Simon Asmundsen Sanakdal, Indre Andersen Vra H. Vides. Lars Davidson Malster, Voss 1814, and Gislasdatter Hammer Flesberg. 1797, Haver Hansen Dalstil H. Vidso, Thomas Testensen, Sime Lairdal 1827, Margaret Alstetter G. Jade Lairdal Sebjorn Thorsen, Nor Rolog Ersten Olsen Blomhoj, Tind Haver Stalisen Sandbeek Laudel, Haver Gulliksen Bringa Silijord Petter Torjusen Talikshavnen, Kradro Torjus Pettersen Talikshavnen, Kradro Ole Pettersen Talikshavnen, Kradro Guttorm Torbjornsen Wig Laudel, Haver Ispbjornsen Juve H. Vidso, Burgeth Liv. Ispbjorn, Eigeld, Asmund, An Helge Sigurdsson Grimsred Tind Sigurd Aslak Olsen Oisnes Vinge, An Alaus Torbjorn Knudsen Rodningen Kradro Ole Vendelbo Olsen G. Jurlov Erland Ragnald. Ole Stephanus Frafleitet, Ester Iverson Romoren Leginger, 1824, Brythe Ole Testensen Osnes Winge Ingeborg Nud Danielsen Stubbered Skogger, 1798, Martha Maria Hans Daniel 1839 Peter Knudsen Stubbered Skogger, 1824, Haver Jensen Stubbered Skogger, 1803, Odny Eigelsen Ergard Vinge Guro Ole. Torbjorn 1843, Lars Pettersen Hockelian Rogen Bertha Ann, Hans. Caroline Niels Estersen Gilderhus Voss Ragnald Martha Maria, 1846, Sigurd Johnson Gislav Winge Ole Nielsen Steenchard Leginger, 1821, Hege Alstetter Osnes, Vinge Kittel Hansen Strami H. Vides. 1790 Dagny and Haverstatter Limesend Vig Haver Torjusen Bortbo 1826, Ole Larsen Fimred Sogndal, 1810, Indre Endresen Rudi Voss 1796. Jorand Maritha 1838, Olin John Torjusen Ham H. Vidso, Stephen Olsen Dahl Vig, 1825 Torsten Olsen Breek Erland 1800 An Ole. Ragnald Nud Olsen Aratun Lairdal 1812, in Erland and Gunald de Christine, Erland. Annie Marie, Ole Lairdal, Torstein Olsen Bjodland Ha, 1803 Guro Yteren Ole, John. 1846, Vettel Thronsen Norgarden H. Vidiso, Hans Gulbrandsen Morkvalden Rolog, 1805. Ingeborg Gabriel Bjornsen Drammen 1820 Helic Helixen Berge Flesberg, 1821. Ole Slaxen Leon Vinge, 1821. Ole Anensen Jamsgard Vinge 1816, Herman Thomasen v. Lairdal 1805, Ingeborg Johan 1838 Ingeborg Andrea. 1843 Andrea B. 1813, Ole Olsen Svacker Lairdal 1820, Thomas Johnson Landeman Sansverd 1842, 1804, Stein Erik Johannessen Italy Erland 1802 Martha, 1798 Ingeborg 1831, Lars 1833, Anna 1858, Håkon 1835, Thomas. 1840 Johans Eriksson Italy Erland 1829, Lars Gunderson G. Gellum Erland 1811 G. Gertrude. Nud, Marth Thorbjorn Olsen G. Jesme Erland 1802 Inga Ingeborg. Kari Ole Olsen Jesmi Erland 1805, Ingeborg Ole Jens Bodalsen Bergvem Erland 1821, Tosten Bodalsen Bergvem Erland Elland Thronsen Kuvale Sogndal 1802 Dorde Sineva, Thron, Bar, Johannes, Elland. Dorth Vettel Gunderson Felland, Mo 1819, Astrid 1821 Gunder. Else 1844, Ole Havorsen Kirkibo Laudel, 1799, Kittel Torgerson Tagseth Flesberg, 1805. Berit Kittel Kittelsen Tagseth Flesberg, 1829, Gullik Gislesen Hammer Flesberg, 1795, Hellik Gulliksen Hammer Flesberg, 1829, Ole Tolefsen Holderone Kradro, 1813 and 1821, Georgian Kittelsen Stramen. H. Vidso Abraham Kittelsen Stramen H. Vidso Anders Helliksen Texel Flesberg, 1791 Gunhild Lars Thorbjornsson G. Jesmi Erland, 1829, Ole Ingebretsen Homstead Overhalden 1846, 1794, Marie 1798, Nud Eriksson Aratun Lairdal 1796, Christie 1796, Gullik Havorsen Holten Flesberg, 1791. Anne Lever 1830, Berit 1836, Haver Gulliksen Holten Flesberg, 1823, Joseph, Johannessen G. Gellum Lairdal Anna Amund Olsen Stromi, Voss 1828, Eigeld Eigildsen Bredland Laudel Johans Andersen Ladel, Voss 1819 Tolef, Olsen Holderone Kradro, 1781 Helga, 1777, Thostel Telefsen Holderone Kradro. 1821, Anders Estjersen Hundir Sogndal, 1817, Ivar Knudsen Sime Voss, 1806, Anna Isak Jakobsen Nordbo Moland Guri Petterstatter Sogndal, 1830, 1 Niels Olsen Selsang Sogndal, 1802 Ingeborg. 1802, Ole Christiansen Selsang Sogndal Martha Britha, G. Gertrude, Christian Ole Rasmussen Rianen, Mo 1775 Ingeborg. 1794 Mitchell 1832, Rasmus 1837 Ole Olsen Rianen Nud Samuelsen, A Laudel 1817 Aslag Anders Johannessen Tommersteigen Vardel Ringsaker, 1807 Maria, 1807 Johans, Olive 1836, Vardel, Petter 1843, Vardel, Karen Marie. 1840, 5 Johans Laersen Sveingjerd H. Vides, 1818 Ole Bjorgosen Ofteli Laudel, 1799 Thone. 1801 Nud Stephensen Tveit, Voss 1801 Johans Johannessen, Verli Sogndal 1816, Marth Knudsen, Breek Erland 1813, Petter Larsen Leon Nies, I Hald 1845, Ole Torjussen, Flom Erland, 1794 Anna. 1798, Ole 1830. Anders 1823 Niels Nielsen Giri Nies, I Hald 1846, 1793, Ole Gulliksen Barsted Sillijord 1842, 1791, Ingeborg, Vettel, Evend, Haver Olsen G. Gergerd Vinge 1822, Henrik Haversen Leon Nies. Hald 1846, 1830, 1 Ole Johnson Halsted Vig 1810 G. Gertrude. Britha 1831, Ragnald 1823, Johans 1836, Olive 1843, Nikolai Haversen Paus, H. Vidso, Jens S. Jersen Hundir Sogndal, 1824 Martha Alst. Selsang Sogndal Ole Vernsen Skotter Laudel Ole Olsen Huset Holden 1821 Kirst Maria. 1825 Ole. Karen, Andrea Sugar Creek 1846 Sugar Creek, Dobt Ole Olsen Huset Holden 1790 Anna Gunder. Hans, Anders, Aslag Maria, Karen Maria Christen Telefsen Holderone Kradro Karen Maria Telef, Willem Ole Olsen Lavig and Christiania 1843. Frafleitet Anders Olsen Bersted Dredad 1846, Ole Andersen Bersted Dredad 1846, Kari Alstetter Dale Vig, 1828, Ole Gunderson Felland, Mo 1826, Simon Monson Hafrand Vig, 1774, Torbjorn Halvorsen Vinge Bjorgo Haraldsen Vinge Thomas Johnson, Dredad 1846 Niels, Knudsen Gravend Sogndal. 1822, Flytet till Spring Prairie, Menade Anand Monson Enjas Legenger 1808 Skal, Verdad I Milwaukee Britha Samsonstatter Legenger 1810, Unni Lassesdatter Legenger 1791, Ole Henriksen Fadnes, Voss Sineva Nud Henriksen Brumborg, Voss 1813 Anders Sanderson All. Hald 1846, 1807 August. 1821, Anders Knudsen Holden 1812, John Henriksen Fadnes, Voss All Thorsen Hagen All. Hald 1846, 1802, Astrid Anders H. Erdegard Hafslo, 1792 Martha Teege. Tind 1821, Haver Johnson Erdegarden Laudel, 1805, Gunder Gunderson Felland, Mo 1810 Thone Lisbeth Alstetter, Huset Holden 1796 Tolef, Gunderson Fladland Kittel Thorson Svimble Jule Gislesen, Hammer Flesberg, 1805, and Gile, Kirsti. Gunder Johans Ingebretsen Gjerd Sogndal Ole Gregoriussen Vestendal H. Fides, 1798, Ole Johnson Bjørn Bamble Klaus, Johnson Bamble Georgian Johnson Bamble Erik Larsen Grav Hafslo Anfind Hansen Beastel Vig, 1796, Even Andersen Ersbergray Ringsaker, 1847, 1793 Telef, Aslaxen Kostvet, Vinge 1820, Gunder Erstensen Jordal. Kinservig 1840, 7 Sigtred, Haver Elefsen Bradlows Kradro 1828, Anders Elefsen Bradlows Kradro 1829, Hans Mikkelsen Lot Kinservig 1847 1817, Britha Bodolf Johannessen Grind Legenger 1799 Marhai, 1806 Marhai, 1833, Petter, 1839, Johan. 1834 Aslak Hansen Hafferdalen H. Fides, 1820, Aslak Knudsen Midbo Vinge Nud Svordesen Rogndal Laudel, 1822, Torstein Eriksson Rockney Voss 1824, Ivar Nielsen Voss Gunleg Torkelsen Oversaker Laudel, 1816, Endre Rasmussen Erdegard Lister, 1826, Ole Olsen Lo Norder 1813 in Jeborg. 1808 Adel Ole, 1842 Hermund Thomasen Arebro Lerdal 1816 Ole Henriksen Hip Norder 1812 Guri, Slitter, Adel Astrid, Merit, Ragnhild. Henrik Hans Johnson Dahl Vidar Ik H4 Han Hans Estersen Erlandvangen Osmund Osmundsen Kjer Nud Knudsen Gilderhus Voss 1824 Mikkel Gulliksen Erdal Hardinger 1840 7 1807 Thorbjer, Sigrid 1832, Ragni 1833, Augund 1838, Thorbjer, Gullik, Mikkel. Christi Erik Estersen Fleisram, Voss 1811, Silfist Estersen Fleisram, Voss 1819 Anders Helliksen Land Flesberg, 1786 Torger Breinaldsen Mork, Voss 1817, Thor Thorbjornsson Kinjelen Vinge, 1807, Ole Hermansen Olne Hafslo 1808, Hans Pettersen Pladsen Hafslo, 1819, Petter Silfestsen Auberge Hafslo. 1819, Sogndal, Lars Osmundsen Juvit Laudel 1798 Imbigorg Johans Estersen Hundir Sogndal, 1811, Pernal Johannesdatter Ringsaker, 1840, 8 1794, Petter Amund Egditvet Voss 1798, Kolbein Torkeldsen Egitvet, Voss 1816, Ole Gunderson, Mo 1796, Nikolai Arnessen Åland Petter Olsen. Bransted Beery 1799 Erica, 1847, Agneth, Aline, Pauline, Otto, Martinus Jens Skaxen Bahus Sogndal 1817 Tarj Havorsen Morkv Moland 1806 Erik Thorsen Svenderest. T. Rolog 1806 Anders Nielsen Lai Voss 1814 Gunver, 1805 Martha 1838, Niels 1841, Esther 1848. Anders 1848 Svend Larsen Lund, Graven 1813 Guri, Haver Bjorgosen Huverstad H. Vides, Ole Andersen Landflesberg, 1826, Gullik Andersen Landflesberg, 1823, Jacob Jacobsen Njos Legenger 1818 Met, 1821 Kari. 1840, 4 Tolef Havorsen Gvale Slitter 1829, Esther Johannessen Quam Sogndal 1847, Ingebrit Pettersen Erdal Hardinger 1840, 7 1809, and Guttorm Johannessen Butte Hardinger 1840, 7 1840, 8 Ragnhilde Johans Larsen Erdal, Graven 1809 Katarine Hellick Hellickson Fossliet Flesberg, 1812 Sigrid Hellick. 1833, Anders 1835, Merritt 1838, Christopher 1841, Christine, Sigrid Johans Andersen Tommersteigen Ringsaker K. Jostolf Gundersen Niset Holden 1808 Marie Gunder. Haver, Ole Petter Havorsen Moe G. Jerpen 1821 Mari, Holden Com. 1844. Haver Kittelsen Nistestug Sillijord 1847, 1822, Ole Jorgensen Hustvet Omli 1823, Ole Gundersen Brodel Skard All 1801, Ole Tolefsen Stolen Herr Martin Tolef, Gunhild Sammenstatter Laudel 1798, Hermund Olsen Offerdal Lerdal 1819 Christie, 1814 Ole. Anders Simon Adelson Gigelum Erland 1825, Britha John Olsen Herjedal Hog 1802, Ole Johnson Herjedal Hog, Svend Amundsen Sins H. Vidso, 1803 Dagny. 1812, Terold Nielsen Drangdal 1825, Gunder Torgesen Lie H. Vides, 1808 Anders Estersen Gilderhus, Voss 1798, Jarand Gregor Havorsen Eddingsaz Sillijord 1847, 1822, John Olsen Ide Evansvig 1840, 8 1814 Esther Storksen, Rick Voss 1809 Zacharias Iversen. Legenger 1817 Kari Johan. Ivar Magni Nielsen Niested Voss 1811 Tollef, G. Germansen Gulstein All 1860 Niels, Olsen Selsang, Sogndal 1781 Ingborg. 1792, Tho Levorsen Svartedal Vinge 1818 Niels, Larsen Eskejärv, Voss 1813 Bodolf, Olsen Livbron Voss 1797 Britha. 1797, Johans Jacobsen Hoyden Vinge, 1795, Margit Gerand Alstetter Skrimoland, 1795, Hans Amundsen Helland Reniso, 1826, Helge Estersen Cedar Voss 1779, Haver Havorsen Strand Audel, 1779, Tarj Tolefsen Felland, Mo 1818 Amund Larsen Felland Mo. 1827, Niels Hermansen Niesvig, 1825, Bernt Matthias Thomson Harrow, 1821, Ole Olsen Tivetenvinge, 1820, Anders Ellingsen Quale Sogndal, 1804 Christy Ole Siversen Kylan, Mo 1812 Vinge 3 Niels Bjornsen Ferrestad Vinge 1813, Ole Johannessen, Skahavd Vardal 1817, Ole Torkeldsen Lislerud Amund. Amundsen Brada Flesberg Ole Naresen Kjær Laudel, +2 Thron Olsen Lindevigen Laudel, Odd Estersen Notvet, Voss 1817, Nud Olsen Unnelland, Voss 1809, Olaf Lavesen Bergland Laudel, Inga Alstatter, Voss Mikkel Larsen Hole, Voss Michael Johannessen, Rolog Kari Gullikstatter Land. In Kef Flesberg Haver Havorsen Strand Valders Ole Larsen Quammen Hardinger, 1847, 1814 Aslak Olsen Sandiger H. Vides, Lars Johannessen Quammen Hardinger, 1840, 8 1823, Jonning Bretson Lond Soldal, 1825, Berge Adrian Brumberg, Voss 1786, Sivert Olsen Berge Laudel Aslak and Dresden Quammen Hardinger. 1840, 7 1805, Gunder Havorsen Bjornsted Moland, 1807, Adel Nud Knudsen Bjelda Erland, 1818 Bendik Andersen, Hav Leganger Anders Nicolaisen, Masted Voss 1801 Helge Olsen Botnen Soldal, 1786 Anand Bjornson Biron Jacob Ingebretsen, G. Gerding Sogndal 1803, Ole Torkeldsen Krogen Lister Rasmus. Nielsen Sorov I Danmark 1805. Holden Nud Bendiksen Nordstrand Adel 1824, Kolbein Olsen Sa Voss 1805 Anna. 1800 Hans, Olsen Kjorn Rolog, 1787 Jarand. 1797, Christian Tarjason Tinamo, Flesberg Tarj Aslaxen Groven Moland Gunder Osmundsen Brutal Moland Karitiri, Margit, Osmund. Evend Kittel Olsen Solberg H. Vides, Nud Olsen Hostvet H. Vides, Abraham Jacobsen Ognevig Lingdal 1806, Bo Stork Tarjason G. Giram Voss Ivar Gulbrandsen, Ringsted Slitter 1812, H. Vidso. John Esterson Bjorgen Voss 1798, Esther Johnson Bjorgen, Voss Erik Mikkelsen Moland, Voss Kirstine Anderstatter Sherping. Enket Erland 1824, Sonder Evensen Groven Sillejord 1840, 8 1804, Olhaversen Erdegard H. Jerdal 1848, Siljord. 1823, 3 Gunhild Amund Mikkelsen Sanden H. Vides, Tolef Haversen Stornsli, Mo Haver Matheson Priestholt, Mo Laudel Nikolai Mikkelsen Erdal Graven Gunder Gundersen H. Vidklev H. Vidse, Mo Elling Andersen Qualen Sogndal Ole Nielsen Selsang. Sogndal Jens Pettersen Tivang Kradro Audi Petter Knudsen Rodningen Kradro Osmund Narasen Tivet Vinge Petter Povelsen Skogen Granslitter Martha Svended Legrade Hardinger 1849 Johans Haversen Sansverd Petter Nielsen Steengerd Legenger Torger Andresen Gro Voss 1816 Lars Bergesen Tillung Voss 1819 Thor Eriksson Val Bamble 1830 Christen Tellefsen Ulleron. Bamble Christian Hermansen Hafslo, 1816, Ole Christiansen Tagen Jacob, Jacobsen Enjas Legenger G. Germund Aslaxen Dalen, Mo Niels Torjusen Grutherud Flesberg, Ole Ielsen Niset Winge 40, 7 R2. Christen Olsen Saghaugen Gustel 40, 5 R. Gertrud Amund Anundsen Brada Flesberg, 53 R4 Tollard Amundsen, Vinge Ole Olsen Stune Andres Ellingsen Assen Vieg. San 1840, 5 Sigrid Ole Monsen Stop Ole Farnes, Anfind Anundsen Voss 53 R3 Nud Torsen, Nor Rolog 26 R Clement Larsen Stalsbrat, Har Verit Medelmer Adel Simonsen Gigelum, Erland 44 R3 Daterkari Gift Med Johans E. Lie Hans Knudsen Ramso Odsland 46 R Tosten Eriksson, Ramso Odsland 59 R Amund Isbjornsen Stengen Sogndal 34 R2 Nud Knudsen Rio, Voss 60 R2. Brynildsen Lon Voss 62 R3 Even Knudsen Robili Slitter 27 R Thorbjorn Gudamsen Vieg Sillejord 1843 Ole Gundersen Moland Helge Andersen Kirkeby H. Vides Ole Olsen Hagen Sillejord 1842 30 R2 Amund Larsen Quammen Graven 47 R2 Hard Johans Johansen Henjum San 43 R Sistrand 2 John Thorsen Lai H. Vides 42 R2 Thor Rolefsen H. Vides 69 R. Petter Ulrich Berntsen, off 49 R. 10 Johans, Larsen Hedemarken Ringsiger, 1839, 28 R. 4. Ringsiger Anders Andersen Grimeland Ombly 37 R. Isak Olsen Suftestad Nissedal 28 R. 4 Ivar Nielsen Evanger, Voss 37 R. 2 Niels Olsen Anskier Voss 32 R. 7, Torgrim Knudsen Tvedtin Nissedal 23 R. Wilhelm Jorgensen Hegland Kradro, Simon Adelsen Gigelum Erland. 26 R2, Eigeld Eigeldsen Brayland Laudel Lars Josefsen, Lai Voss 29 R2, Even Haversen Leifsted Mo 28 R Voss Anders. Torgersen Leonas Flesberg 38, half R6 Nikolai Nielsen Tveet, Graven 25 R2, Erik Johannessen, Itrali Erland 49 R Gullik Gislesen, Hammer Flesberg 55 R3 Ole Thorsen, Nor Numdal 25 R3, plus 1 Niels Haversen Lengimo Sanagdal, 1850 58 R4, Petter Johansen Klungehelt Knees. Hedemarken 1849 58 R5. Flauberg Nud Arnesen Tvet Keinservig, 1850 25 R Ivar Pettersen Skar, graven 23R listen anfind Strixen Ladel and Ke. Karen Haverstatter Solum 50R6 gens, Brodolfen Bergvem Erland 30R4. H. Vidso Lars Havelsen Baver Beer 43R7 gens, Johannessen Nies Wig 23R2. Ringsaker. J.W.C. Dietrichson. Den 28 NDMI, 1850. To save space, I have set the wife's name at the extreme right of the page, instead of below the husband's name. Children's names are given in the second line. The English footnotes are my own additions. Caption in fourth column added by me. Han bor på Sun Prairie. Han arbeidet den første dobfont I Vesterkirk, 1844. Flyttel til Norway Grove. Married the widow, Ann Gurin and Jebrikstatter, in 1846. Was married in 1845 to Esther Kolbeinsen Draksvold. Lisbeth Evenstatter Tivabiken, from Vinge. Later married Tolef S.A., he was not in the congregation. Hans hustru nu I Norge, men han venter hend I sommer. Added later, han Dodd. She was Christy Monstatter Mellas, is still living, Stoughton and Wise. Later married Stephen Olsen Dahl. She was born in Leganger. Martha Monstetter Mellas, B. 1818. Same as Pertreja. They were married in 1845. Came to America in 1843. Born 1819 in Lairdal. Justice of the Peace. This is an error. Anders Flom was born in 1834. Stensham. It will have been observed that it has been impossible to make out some of the names, the last part of the register having been written in a very illegible hand. Chapter 38. The founding of the Norwegian settlements of Norway Grove, Spring Prairie and Bonnet Prairie in Dane and Columbia counties, Wisconsin. In the extreme northern part of Dane County and the towns of Vienna, Windsor, and Bristol, a large number of Norwegian immigrants, principally from San, settled in 1846-1848, forming the nucleus of what in a few years came to be one of the most prosperous settlements in southern Wisconsin. The first Norwegian in this section was Svenung Nicholson Dahl, who came from Flatdal in Telemarken in 1844 to Koshkonong, and the next year purchased land and settled near Norway Grove in the town of Vienna. He was then only 18 years old. Nearly all who came later were from San, and Dahl was and remained the only native of Telemarken in Vienna. In 1846, Eric and Jessiter from Leikanger, San, with family, including a son John, settled there. In 1847 Ole H. Farnes, B. 1826, and wife Gertrude came from San, Norway to Norway Grove. Eric C. Farnes, B. 1828, also came the same year. These men both acquired large farms there in the course of time, Ole Farnes owning 530 acres. Arne Boyum and family, 5 in all from Outer San, came in 1848 as did not K. Nas, B. 1810, with wife Allow and family of 4 children from Krajero. About 1858, he married Maline Urian, B. in Ardal, San, in. Svenung Dahl died in 1872, the owner of 400 acres of land. He was married to Ingeborg Grind in 1851, Reverend A. C. Prieus performing the ceremony. Ingeborg was the daughter of Botolf Grind, who came from San in 1846 and settled on Liberty Prairie. 2 sons, Thomas and Isaac, went to the war in 1860. Thomas was killed in the Battle of Antietam, September 17, 1862. Nut Nas died in 1868, his wife in 1887. The first Norwegian to buy land in Windsor Township was Ingebrigt Larsen Tigum, from Sistrand, San, who immigrated in 1844, lived 1 year in Muskego, then came to Windsor in 1845. For 2 years, he seems to have been the only Norwegian in the town. In 1852, Tigum sold his farm in Windsor and moved into Vienna Township, buying the farm at present occupied by the son Lars, B. 1849. In 1847, the following settled in Windsor Township: Stephen Hallam and family, who had immigrated in 1845 and lived 2 years at Rock Prairie, Esther Grind and family, and Trulls E. Farnes and wife. These families are intimately connected with the history of the village of DeForest. A son of S. Hallam, namely Ole S. Hallam, B. 1847, lives on 204 acres of land adjoining the village. Ole Hallam is a prominent Democrat and has held various offices of trust, being e.g. Register of Deeds in 1877-78. In 1848, several families moved in, among them Lars Eggum, Ole Johannes and family, 10 in all, and Esther S. Vangnes and family. Vangnes had immigrated in 1844, first settled in Rock County, then came to DeForest in 1848. He died there in 1878. The family included a son, Esther S. Vangnes, b. 1816 at Vangsnes in Son, whom we meet with later as a man of much influence in the township. He owned 264 acres of land near DeForest. Larson married Brita Dale, widow of John Eichen on Rock Prairie in 1847. She died in 1902, aged 89. Farnes came from Balestrand Parish. Farnes died in 1885. His wife died in 1902 at the home of her daughter, Mrs. H.T. Lerdahl, Madison, Wisconsin. As I shall not have occasion elsewhere to speak of the township of Burke directly south of Windsor, I may here say that the first Norwegian settlers were Torkel Gulliksen, b. 1815, and wife Marguerite, whom he had married in 1843. They came to Pleasant Spring in 1844 and moved up to Burke the following year. For several years, there came no more Norwegians. In Bristol Township, 3 families settled as early as 1846, namely that of Bodolf E. Bergum, b. 1816, who came there in the fall of 1846 and continued to reside there until his death in 1904. His wife died in 1903. After a wedded life of 54 years, Esther Johnson and wife Ingeborg and 1 son, and Eric Larson and wife and several children. They left 5 sons, Eric, Ellick, Peter, who live on Spring Prairie, Marcus Deerfield, and John, who lives in Cottage Grove, and 1 daughter, Mrs. Peter Hagen, Spring Prairie. In 1848, Hans H. Quam came up to Bristol from Rock Prairie, where he had settled in 1846, coming from Norway that year. During the next 3 years, so many immigrants came from Son and located in Norway Grove that the settlement came to be called Son. Among the many families who located there at that time, John Ollies of Madison, Wisconsin, writing in Bygdievening, page 341, names: in Jessither, Grind, Farns, Tigum, Eggum, Boyum, Husebo, Hammer, Onstead, Slind, Sveren, Vangsnes, Hollum, Lind, Liddal, Thorsnes, Foss, Rendal, Ethan, Vigdal, Ulvestad, Roysum, Svalem, Efjersted, Henjum, Jerd, Hockness. Besides all who were called Olsen, Larson, Nilsson, Anderson, Peterson, Johnson, etc. About 10 miles northwest of Norway Grove, at Lodi in Columbia County, a smaller settlement of immigrants from Hardanger takes its beginning in 1847-48. Although 1 family had settled there as early as 1844. In that year, Petter L. Erdvin, b. 1819, and wife Catherine Spanum, from Ulvik and Hardanger, emigrated to America and went direct to Lodi. 10 years later, they moved to Springdale in Dane County. In 1847, Petter Froland, see page 336, and Ole Joan, both from Hardanger, became the founders of the Hardanger settlement there. In 1846, Amund Himmel and family from Voss immigrated and settled near Lodi, but below the Dane County line. Petter Erdvin and wife returned to Norway in 1893 to spend their declining days at Hardanger. Mrs. Erdvin died there in 1895. In 1902, the son, L. P. Erdvin, visited his father in Norway and brought him back to his home in Verona, Dane County, where he died in 1903. The origin of the Spring Prairie settlement in Columbia County, the northern extremity of which is more specifically called Bonnet Prairie, dates back to 1845. In that year, 4 men settled about the same time on Spring Prairie, namely, Odd Himmel and Esther S. Rick from Voss Anders Langetag from Vik in Son, and Nud Langeland from Racine County. The 3 first of these had families. Rick moved away again 4 years later, settling on Liberty Prairie, not far from Deerfield. Langeland, as we have recited above, was already in 1848 back in Racine County as one of the founders of Nordlyset, the first Norwegian newspaper published in this country. But Himmel and Langetag became permanent settlers. In his book Nordmyndin I Amerika Langeland gives a circumstantial account of his coming to Spring Prairie. He says that in August of 1845 he and Niels Torstensen, equipping themselves with a cook stove, provisions, bedding, and all the necessities for camping out, drove with oxen and a wagon from Racine via Koshkonong, following the regular road to Madison, presumably going by West Koshkonong Church. But Madison did not attract them. He says, Madison had nothing remarkable about it except its natural beauty and the big territorial building, which looked very imposing among the small frame houses. These sons of the land of mountains were scared away by the big hills, where the university is now situated, and turned east, driving almost as far as Fort Winnebago, where Amund Rosaland, a friend of Langeland's from Norway, had recently settled. Not finding the marshes here very inviting, and failing to meet Rosaland at home, they decided to turn back. Camping out overnight, they drove back 20 miles the next day. Then, upon the advice of an American by the name of Young, they turned east, and driving on a few miles, came upon an American by the name of Gilbert, who was just engaged in erecting his log hut. The prairie here was to their liking, and they selected a site, and in due time entered a claim on land. Langeland says there came no other Norwegians there that fall, but as we have seen, 3 others did locate in other parts of the prairie about the time Langeland came there. That same fall, Langeland went to Milwaukee to take out preemption papers, and he stopped at Koshkonong and told his countrymen there of the beauties of the prairies to the north, and a little later he wrote letters to friends in LaSalle County, Illinois. From Milwaukee, he says he brought back to Spring Prairie with him a plow, a harrow, and other farm tools. In the spring of 1846, Petter Froland came up there from LaSalle County, bringing with him 2 ox teams and a wagon and farm tools. But he seems to have been the only one who came from LaSalle County. A number of settlers, however, came from Boone County and Jefferson Prairie to Spring and Bonnet Prairie in 1847-1850. In June 1846, Norwegian immigrants began to come in hosts from or via Koshkonong, says Langeland. He and Froland plowed about 100 acres of prairie land for the newcomers that season. 2 years later, Langeland sold his claim and moved back to Racine County, who had come to America in 1837. So it happened that also Spring Prairie became settled largely from Koshkonong, and as this was the period in which immigration from San was taking place on a large scale, it was especially Sonnings who took possession also of this region, though a considerable number of Vossings also gradually moved in. Reverend L.S. J. Rick writes me that Spring Prairie is today almost exclusively a Sonning-Vossing settlement, and the former predominate. The Spring Prairie settlement, whose beginnings have here been briefly sketched, rapidly expanded north to Bonnet Prairie, this part of it coming to be known as the Bonnet Prairie Settlement. The settlement is located principally in Otsego Township, but partly in Hampton and surrounding towns. The first Norwegian settlers in this locality were John Andersen and Kjell Andersen, who came in 1846, having immigrated from Sod, Telemarken that year. The following is a list of the founders of the settlement as submitted to me by Samuel Sampson of Rio, Wisconsin. Mr. Sampson, B. 1839, is the only survivor of those who settled there at that time, being the son of Thorbjorn Scuttle. The year to the right of each name indicates the year of immigration to America. All except the last 2 settled at Bonnet Prairie in 1846. These 2 settled there in 1848. Name wife where from. John Andersen Ansod Kjell Andersen in Jebber Sod Hans, Jorgensen Kjosvik Kari Holden Peter Haversen Vallon Kirsty Holden Agan Arnes in Jeberg Sod Leif Johnson Dahl Liv Marie, Sod Tolef Olsen Hakos, in Jebberbo Iver Vangen Martha Aland, Gunlake Olsen Svalstuen in Jebber Sod Nut Gunnelsen Tivet Margit Newmiddle, even to Stenson in Ligen Guro Sod Hans Hakos, As Anna Bohans Tolefsen Helene Sod Johans, Frondel Ragnald Aland Eilif, Olsen Johans Son Mikkel. Knutsen Son Johans Johannessen Jival Kari, Sod Haver Shelby Ingrai, Sod Thorbjorn Sampson Scuttle Anna Voss. Since the above was written, I have received from Reverend L.S.J. Rick of Morrisonville, Wisconsin, further facts relative to the earliest settlers there. The earliest records of the Bonnet Prairie Church, kept by Reverend A.C. Prieus, show that the testimonial of emigration was issued to Evend T. and Ligon. April 5, 1843, to Johans Johannessen, April 10, 1843, to John Andersen and wife May 3d and 6, 1843, to Hans Olsen Hawkaz, May 7, 1843. Also to Thorbjorn Samsonsen and wife Anna Ellingstatter, May 13, 1844. As it is probable that these emigrated at the time of issue of the testimonial of emigration, the table should be corrected with reference to these names. During the intervening 3 years, most of the above had lived in Boone County, Illinois, whither also some of the later settlers came en route to Bonnet Prairie. Thorbjorn Scuttle and family, who came from Voss, sailing on the ship Hercules, located first at Jefferson Prairie. T. Scuttle and his wife both died in 1897, age 88 and 91 respectively. Chapter 39. Blue Mounds in Western Dane County, Wisconsin. The extensive Norwegian settlement in western Dane County, ordinarily referred to as Blue Mounds from the Blue Mounds in the township of that name, was founded in 1846. 3 families had, however, located there as early as 1844, namely those of Thor Aas, Petter Dusterud, and Lars P. Dusterud. Thor Aas, with wife Martha, 5 sons and 2 daughters, settled on Section 10 in Springdale. They came from Son in 1843 and had lived 1 year at Weota. Petter Dusterud and wife and family settled on Section 33 in Blue Mounds, and the son Lars Dusterud and wife located on Section 27, both in Blue Mounds Township. These 2 came from Rock Run, Illinois, where they had located in 1842, immigrating from Vigley, New Middle. They had also worked for some time in the Dodgeville, Wise, lead mines. The children were Ivar B. 1818, Lass Hermund Talak John, Sineva and Britha. Lars Dusterud and wife are still living at Mt. Horeb. In 1846, a company of 11 persons arrived from Racine County. They were the following: Tor Torsen Spanum, Haver and Nils H. Grastillen, John I. Burge and wife Julia and 1 child, his sister Mrs. Nut Sorensen K. Visterud, Tossin Thompson Rue, Ole T. Garden, Ole K. Visterud, and Ole S. Jutvit. Nut S. K. Visterud, who had just before this gone to Mineral Point and secured work there, came to Blue Mounds in 1848. John Thompson later was more generally called Snowshoe Thompson, from the fact that he carried the U.S. mail over the Sierra Nevada mountains for 20 years, 1856-1876, walking on skis. All these came from Muskego, Wisconsin, whither they had immigrated from Tin, Telemarken. Spanum and Haver Grastillen had come there in 1841, Nut K. Visterud and wife in 1843, and Burge in 1845. The Rue family had come from Norway, as we have seen, in 1839, see above page 125. In 1846, the town of Primrose, immediately south of Springdale, also received its first Norwegian settlers, namely Christian Hendriksen, wife Maria and 3 children, Caroline, Henry, and Charles. He had emigrated from Lier, Norway in 1842 and worked 4 years in the lead mines at Weota to pay his passage from Norway. Mr. Hendriksen drove from Weota to Primrose with oxen, all his possessions being then a wagon, a cow, and 75 cents. He lived 8 years in the log hut, first erected, and built a stone structure in 1855. The next arrivals to Blue Mounds were Eric Salvi, who came from Son in 1847 and lived successively in Springdale, Vermont, and Blue Mounds, and Gullik Svensrud and family from Vigley, New Middle, who had immigrated in 1844 and first located on Rock Prairie. It was also in 1847 that the first immigrant from Valders arrived in Blue Mounds. This was Ragnhild Fadnes, who in 1851 married Ever Halston. She was born in North Odell in 1826. As near as I am able to determine, she was the only member of the family who came at the time. The party with which they came left Drammen April 20th and landed at Quebec June 20th. They arrived at Rock Prairie on July 4th. The family included several children. A daughter, Gunhild B. 1837, married Haver Havorsen of Mt. Horeb. During 1846-1847, other localities, Weota, Western Koshkonong, Spring Prairie, and Norway Grove had claimed a considerable portion of the immigrants. But in 1848, they began to come in large numbers in the townships of Western Dane County and neighboring parts of Iowa County. To Primrose, the following came in that year: Nils Skogen, Salv Jorgensen, and Nils Einarsen. To Perry, Ole O. Bakken and wife Ann Bergum and 2 sons, Ole and Tideman, from Valders. This was the first Norwegian family to locate permanently in Perry. Bakken bought the claim of a squatter named Andreas Olsen, who was therefore the earliest Norwegian in the township. Later in the same year came Lars Langemer from Christiania, Norway, Torger T. Tivet from Omli in Nedenes, Reier Orhus from Telemarken, Haver O. Mileston from Hadeland, and Lars Halvorsen and Hans Johnson from Dredad. The arrivals of 1848 were Ole Barton, wife Ingeborg and son Ole, Gulbrand Elsberg, wife Ingeborg and 2 daughters, Christian O, Skogen, Ole O Bråten and Nils O Belgum, and in 1849, Nud Larsen Anders Lundin, Ivar Halstein, Ivar Lund, Ole Gel SR, and Tor Manum, all of whom were from Valdres, mostly from North Odal. Tolef S. Anmarksrud and wife Karen came to Koshkanong the latter year, but he also removed to Blue Mounds in 1850. During the next few years, immigration to the various townships of western Dane County was rapid. For the fall of 1849 and in 1850 are to be mentioned, e.g., the following arrivals in Springdale Township: Harold and Arnhoff, Ole and Aslak Lee, Leverlian, Ole Thompson Brendan, Anders, John and Nutlund, Nut J. Lindelian, Harold Stugard, Mitchell Kalskett and Eric O. Skinrud. Several of these had large families. To Blue Mounds Township came Eric and Jen, Ole Bowley, wife and 4 children, and Arn Rost, with family of 11 children. All those named here came from Valdres. Ellsberg not long afterwards started for Manitowoc to visit a brother, who had just come there, and was never heard from again. Bowley and Rost were from South Odal. From Son came Ole A. Grind and Ole Meanies, the latter remaining, however, 2 years in Norway Grove before coming to Blue Mounds. Michael Johnson, B. 1832 in Lakenger, Norway, emigrated to America in 1853, located first in Windsor, then removed to Vienna, finally settled permanently in Springdale in 1856. His parents, John Michelson Dalbot and wife Randy, and his sister Martha and younger brother Bodolf came to America in 1854. Mr. Johnson became a prosperous farmer and stock raiser, his farm of 400 acres being one of the finest in that part of the state. He took an active part in church and school affairs and was for many years a member of the governing body, Kirkerod, of the Norwegian Lutheran Evangelical Synod of America. He held many positions of trust in the town and the county, was a member of the state legislature for 3 consecutive terms, 1874-75-76, and for years a well-known figure in the politics of the state. Mr. Johnson lived in Mt. Horeb since 1894. He died in 1908, leaving a widow and 7 children. Martha married Ole O. Flom in 1854. Botolf is B.J. Borlaug, well-known capitalist and banker of Kenyon, Minnesota. The family had moved from Åland to Borlang in Fayos, Lakenger Parish, where the children were all born. In Primrose and Perry, the Norwegians also settled extensively in 1849-1850. Among those who arrived in the former year were Gunnuf and Ole Tollefsen from Salterstalen, who, as we have seen above, page 281, had immigrated to Muskego in 1845. Others who came to Primrose that year were G. and Ole Danielson from Telemarken, Leif Olsen, Kittel Moland, Ole Anderson, and Peter P. Haslerud. Tollefsen relates how he became the possessor of his quarter section in Primrose as follows. As I wished to own land of my own as soon as possible, I went to Primrose in 1849. Here I met Niels Einarson. There was enough of land, but how to get the number of what I selected was the question. After much search, we found a large oak a short distance east from where Norman Randall lives. On this tree was clearly to be seen the following letters and numbers: NW a quarter, S23, T5, N, R. 6E. There was neither pen nor paper to get without going many miles, and something had to be done at once. I borrowed an axe of Emerson, cut down a little poplar, and after having cut it flat on both sides so that it became quite thin, I took my pocket knife and cut into it the letters and numbers just as they were in the tree. With this poplar stuck under my arm, I went to the land office and laid the stick and the money on the table, to the officials' amusement. They understood the description, and I got the land. Ole Danielson had lived in Illinois since he came from Norway in 1846. The citation is from Langeland, page 73. Tollefsen says that at Clinton he worked for a Mr. Sherwood a while. He cut 600 rails for the loan of the latter's oxen and wagon with which to bring his parents from Muskego to Rock County. During 1850 came Mrs. Ole Baker with son P. O. Baker, B. 1838, Mons Ness, Ellingstam, Ole Skult and Lars Halvorsen from Hallingdal, Nut and Jens Olsen from Stavanger, Lars L. Kalv and family from Voss and Nut Bardsen Bowersen, and family from Cedarstalen. During 1853 to 1855, Norwegians came in still greater numbers, writes Reverend Hoverstad. About 20 Norwegians settled in Perry in 1849. They were Torger Hastvedt, Hans J. Dahl, Ole Gangse and Jacob Onhus from Telemarken, Andreas Stutelian and Jull Havernd, wife and 8 children from Valders, and Anders Sanderson from Hallingdal. After 1849, Norwegians came in large numbers, settling up the town rapidly. I shall mention here only Annan Bjornson Dahl, b. 1823, from Nisedal, who settled in Perry in 1853, and Christian Evansen, b. 1819, from Valders, and wife Ragnhild from Numedal, who came there in 1854. Dr. Evans tells me that Ragnhild Evansen, maiden name Ragnhild Breck, was born in Numedal, Norway, in 1819, and after her marriage to Christian Evansen, immigrated to America in company with her brother Lars N. Breck, who for many years resided and conducted a grocery store in Madison, Wise. In the year 1848, preceding her husband by about 5 years. They came by sailing vessel and were 16 weeks on the voyage, having been grounded on a rock off the coast of England and were obliged to wait repairs. After landing in New York, they came by Erie Canal and the lakes to Milwaukee, Wise, then to near Stoughton, Wise, and later to Madison, where she met her husband 5 years later. From Madison, they moved to Perry, Dane County, and settled on Section 23 and remained there until their death. O.B. Dahl, who had been a school teacher in Nisedal, left Norway in company with a cousin, Nut Dahl, in 1848. They first came to Koshkonong, where the former taught parochial school for 2 years. They went to California in 1850 in search of gold, as so many others. Having been unusually successful in the gold mines, they returned in 1853, and Annan Dahl bought a farm in Perry, on which he founded the village of Dalyville, beginning at the same time there a mercantile business. Here he amassed a fortune, retired and moved to Mt. Horeb in 1897. In 1854, Dahl married Betsy Nelson, daughter of Hermo and Tuft of Racine County, and sister of the well-known lay evangelist, Elling Eilson. Mr. Dahl always took an active interest in public affairs and in the work of the Lutheran Church of which he is a member. He died in July 1905, his wife having died in February of the same year. Among them were Nut Grimstvedt and Ole Hastvedt from Telemarken. Jens P. Tyvend b. 1817, who had emigrated from Sanakdal in 1843 to Lisbon, Ill, and removed to Stoughton, Wise. In, settling in Pleasant Spring, located in Perry in 1854. Mrs. Evansen died in 1894 and Mr. Evansen in 1897, survived by 2 children, Anne and Niels, Dr. N. E. Evans of Mt. Horeb. C. Evansen was a successful farmer, owning 279 acres of land. He also conducted a store at Perry after 1874. They left 4 children. H. B. Dahl, one-time member of Congress, J. T. Dahl, who died in 1908, Henry L. Dahl, all of Mt. Horeb, and Mrs. James A. Peterson, Minneapolis. We shall close this chapter with a word about the first Norwegians in Madison, Wisconsin. It is not until 1850 that Norwegians began to locate in Madison in considerable numbers. However, there were a few there before that. As near as I can find out, Ole Torgersen, Ole O, Flom, Ole Lenvik, and Haver and Hodge, all of whom came to Madison in 1844, were the first Norwegians in Madison. All 4 of these worked for a printer by the name of Daniel Holt. Ole Flom, as we have seen, had come from Norway with his parents that summer in the first party that left Åland, Son. He remained in Madison till 1847, when he returned to his father's farm at Door Creek. Haver Hodge had come from Norway with his parents in the summer of 1844. The family had located in the town of Christiana. Haver went to California in 1848, where he remained several years, returning then to Koshkonong. Ole Torgersen had emigrated from Norway in 1844, coming directly to Madison, where he continued to live till his death in 1900. He published during 1850 there a Norwegian paper in the interests of the Whig Party. But as this was not a paying enterprise, he sold his types to Nutlangeland, who soon after began the issue of Månedstiden Janesville, having previously published Nordlyset and Democrate in Muskego. Among other Norwegians in Madison in the early days were Anne Vick, who worked for Dr. Collins during 1845. In 1846, she married Haverbjorn, a Koshkonong pioneer. In July 1846, Hans Christiansen from Lærdal, Son, came to Madison. He, however, soon removed to Blooming Grove, where he located permanently. Haver Gabriel immigrated from Haugesund in 1848, coming direct to Madison, where he continued to live until 1877. He then moved to Sun Prairie and in 1893 to Fort Atkinson, where he died in 1897. Among the subscribers to Nordlyset and Democrate, 1848-1850, appear the names of 3 residents of Madison, namely Eric Anderson, Lars Johnson, and William Anderson. Finally, when the Bethel congregation was organized in 1855, the following appear as charter members: Ole Torgersen, Mrs. Ole Torgersen, Hans Olsen, Mr. Eriksson, Olaf Olsen, Håkon Larsen, Nels Petersen, Lars Nelson, Ole Lawrence, Halle Stensland, Eline Hole, Ann Nilsson, Ingeborg Olsen, and Ann Olsen. Lars Nelson Breck had come there in 1848 from Newmiddle, coming direct to Madison. Mr. Nelson was well and favorably known as the owner of a grocery store on West Main Street for many years. Of the other persons mentioned above, only Håkon Larsen and Halle Stensland are now living. The latter has always held a prominent place in the financial history of the capital and in general in the upbuilding of the city. He has always been a staunch member of the Bethel Church and was one of the leaders in the organization of the Norwegian-American Pioneer Association, of which he was president in 1903-05. Flom was with Dr. Collins during 1846. As we have seen, Nud Langeland and Niels Torstensen passed through Madison in 1845. He died there a few years ago. Eric Anderson had come to America with his parents in 1839 and lived in Chicago till 1845, CP 232s. Then they moved to McHenry County, Illinois. In 1847, Eric went to Muskego, where he engaged as compositor in the office of Nordlyset, setting the type for the first number. In 1848, he went to Madison and began clerking in a general store. He settled as a farmer in Winneshiek County, Iowa, in 1850. See page 346 above. Chapter 40. The Hardinger Settlement in Lee and DeKalb Counties, Illinois. Big Grove in Kendall County and Nettle Creek in Grundy County, Illinois. Although Hardinger has contributed a relatively small proportion of the American immigrant population from Norway, several of the earliest arrivals were from that province, and its sons occupy today a prominent place in Norwegian-American history. It has been shown above, chapters Roman 9 and X, that several members of the party who came in 1836, as also of that of 1837, were natives of Hardinger. And in the Chicago colony in 1839, we met with several natives of that province. In 1839, a considerable number left Hardinger, especially from Ulvik Parish, as we learn from Nordmanns Forbundet, 1909, page 175. Among these were the brothers Anders and Johan Vick from Eidfjord and Hardinger. The 2 brothers first went to Weota, where they secured work in the lead mines. In 1844, John Vick Week went to Dodgeville, where he established himself as a shoemaker, entering into partnership with Johan Lee from Newmiddle. Later, he went to Portage County, Wisconsin, where he prospered and was for over a decade a dominant power in the lumber trade of northern Wisconsin. These facts gathered from an article by L.J. Erdahl in America for September 18, 1901. The brother, Anders Vick, Andrew Week, went to California in 1849. Among the immigrants who had come from Hardinger, parish of Ullensvang, in 1836, we mentioned Amund Helgesen Makestad above, page 95. Makestad dropped the family name in this country and called himself Amund Hillesen. For a little over a year, he was a coast sailor. Then he decided to go west and secure land where his countrymen had settled. This he did, but not in the usual way, for Hillesen walked the whole distance from New York to Chicago. This was in 1837. As Reverend J. Nordby, Lee, Illinois, informs me. From Chicago, he directed his steps farther west. He did not, however, go to the settlement founded several years before, but pushed on as far as Lee Center in the county of Lee. Here he secured work, saved some money, and bought a homestead in Bradford Township, and erected thereon a sod house. Soon after, he married Catherine Reinhardt, daughter of a German pioneer, recently moved in. Strand relates an experience which Hillesen had between Chicago and Lee Center, and which would seem to indicate that he had intended to go to La Salle County. For 10 years, Hillesen was the only Norwegian settler in the county, but in 1847 there arrived, in response to letters from Hillesen, a considerable party from Hardanger. These left Sorfjorden in Hardanger and embarked in May at Bergen in the sailing vessel Juno, which brought them to New York in a little over 4 weeks, a remarkable record for that time. Mr. T.M. Newton, Torgils Knutsen, says, "When we came to Buffalo, we met an old man who was returning to Norway. He advised us to go back at once, saying America was not a fit place for respectable people to live in, it was a place for thieves and robbers." The party consisted of the following persons: Lars Larsen Risetter, Lars Olsen Espe, Lars Helgesen Makestad, G. Gertrud H. Lanning, Helge H. Makestad, who died in 1854, in Jeborg H. Makestad, Torgils Knudsen Makestad, Estger Estgersen Bly, and Lars Larsen Bly. They were met at Chicago by Amund Hillesen. Lars Bly remained in Chicago, the rest started for Lee County, stopping a short time at Norway, La Salle County. Thereupon all but Ingeborg Makestad drove to Hillesen's home in Lee County. Most of them settled in Bradford Township, but Lars Risetter, born 1827 in Ullensvang, bought 80 acres of land in Subbolt Township, whither other subsequent immigrants from Hardanger also soon moved. Soon after arriving, Risetter and G. Gertrud Lanning were married in the first house built by a Norwegian in Lee County, at the home of Amund Hillesen. Lars Espe and Lars Risetter were the first two of the party to build a log cabin. T.M. Newton says the journey took only 3 weeks, others say 4. Newton was from Kinservig. The journey was made with oxen and lumber wagon. Inger Makestad remained at Norway for a time. She married Lars Espe soon after. Mr. Newton tells that 2 young men came from La Salle County about the same time and bought a piece of land in Franklin Grove about 2.5 miles from where he lived. They lived in a log cabin on their place, he says. One night about 2 months after we arrived, they were both murdered. The same day I had tried to persuade one of them to stay with me, but he felt it necessary to be at home. Their heads had been split open with an axe. I then thought of what the old gentleman had tried to tell us, and heartily wished myself back in Norway. During the years 1848, no immigrants left Hardanger for America, and Lee County received no settlers directly from Norway. In 1849, however, 32 emigrated from Ulvik, but none of these seem to have come to the settlement. In 1850, there was one accession, namely Amund Lanning, who came directly to his brother-in-law, Lars Risetter, in Subbolt Township. He worked in the harvest the first season for Thomas Fessenden for $11 a month, bought a quarter section in Willow Creek Township in 1852, being the first Norwegian to settle there. In 1857, Lars Risetter also moved into Willow Creek Township, where he has since lived. Mrs. Risetter died in 1897. Mr. Risetter is still living. His 2 sons, Louis and Holden, occupy the homestead with him. Of the rest, Torgils Makestad, who adopted the name T.M. Newton, Knutsen, is still living, his home being at Grinnell, Iowa. Estger Blaine lives at the Old People's Home, Stoughton, Wisconsin. In 1851, the following arrived from Ullensvang, Hardanger, and located in the settlement: Jacob O. Rogd B. 1828, Håkon L. Risetter and wife Maria, Hildel, Haldor Nilsen Hovland, and Agatha Espe, a sister of Lars Espe. Rogd purchased 80 acres of land in Bradford Township in 1854, and in 1855 he married Else Bly from Hardanger, who had come to America in 1854. Håkon Risetter settled in Ogle County, immediately north of Lee County. Of those who arrived in subsequent years, many settled across the county line into DeKalb County, and in a few years there had sprung up a thriving and prosperous community. At present, the Bradford Norwegian Evangelical Congregation of Lee numbers 300 adult members. The center of the settlement is about 4 miles south of Franklin Grove. See Christopher of Groover, Iowa, who has kindly given me many of the facts relative to the immigration from Hardanger, names the following as arriving in Lee County in 1854: Lars N. Rogd and wife Enger W. Sandveen, Wiglake W. Risetter, Hel P. Bly and wife Torbjer, Skare, Samson S. Sandveen and wife Biga H. Makastad. The last three and Lars Rogd died the same year. Immediately east of DeKalb and the northern part of La Salle County lies Kendall County, into which extends a northeastern branch of the original Fox River settlement, located chiefly in Big Grove Township. The village of Newark lies within its boundaries. The first Norwegian to settle in the village of Newark was Ole Olsen Hedaltvedt, as we have observed above. Ole Hedaltvedt, or Metal Paint as he was called, was born in August 1797 and was, as we know, one of the members of the Sloop Party. Of his first years in this country we have already spoken. He came to Newark in 1839. There he lived till his death in 1854. The next settlers in Newark were Herman Osmondson and Nut W. Tisland, both of whom also located there in 1838. The first Norwegian settler at Lisbon was John Hiddle, from Fjeldberg in Sandhordland, Norway. He came to America in 1836, going direct to La Salle County. Among the immigrants of that year were also Anders Andersen Aasen and wife Olna and family from Tisvær Parish, a little south of Haugesund. The family included a daughter Susanna, born 1822, who was married to John Hill in 1844. The Aasen family lived in Kendall, New York, for 2 years, then in 1838 moved to La Salle County, Illinois. In 1839, John Hill located at Lisbon, and he was thus the first Norwegian to settle here, whither a considerable number later moved. About 1846, Esther Larsen came there from Skanevik, Norway. Lars Kjell came in 1847. Lars Boe and Michael Boe came at the same time. John Hill died in 1892, but Mrs. Suzanne Hill is still living with her daughter, Mrs. Austin Osmond, b. 1845, in Morris, Grundy County, Illinois. The Norwegians did not begin to come in extensively to Lisbon before 1850. Mrs. Austin Osmond, oldest daughter of Mr. and Mrs. John Hill, who is now living in Morris, Grundy County, tells me that she was the only Norwegian child in school at Lisbon when she first began to attend, but later there gradually came more. At Newark, several Norwegians had already begun to move on. Goodman Havorsen, b. 1821, and wife Martha Grindheim from Etney Parish in Sandhordland came to America in 1847 and purchased land in Fox Township, Kendall County. He erected his log cabin there in the spring of 1848. Havorsen is still living on the old homestead, which, however, he leases to other parties. Osmund Tutland from H. Hjelmeland in Reifolk and wife Melinda from Ardel in Reifel and 2 children had come to Mission Township, La Salle County, in 1836. A daughter, Mrs. Anna Hegland, b. 1842, is at present living in Newark. Tutland became, in 1854, the founder of the Norwegian colony at Norway, Benton County, Iowa. Lars Fruland of Newark is a son of Nils Froland, who emigrated from Samnanger, near Bergen, in 1837, settling in La Salle County. Among the old pioneers of Lisbon was also Henry Munson from Voss, but I am not able to give the year of his arrival. Munson died in 1907, being over 90 years old. Weir Estersen Weeks, born in Skanevik in 1812, and wife Sineva and 2 children emigrated in 1846. After much hardship and sickness in the family, through which they lost the 2 daughters, they arrived at Lisbon late in 1846. Here Weeks worked at first at the trade of a carpenter. In 1848 he bought 80 acres of land on North Prairie, 5 miles north of Lisbon. Here he settled permanently, prospered, and became an influential citizen and active member of the Lutheran Church of North Prairie. Mr. Weeks died in February 1900 at the age of 87. His wife lived till 1904, reaching the age of 94. A name most closely associated with the early annals of Newark is that of Taurus Johnson, b. in Skanevik 1837, who came to America with his grandfather Taurus Torreson in 1848. Having arrived at Chicago, they went to Calumet, 20 miles south of Chicago, to Halstein Torreson, who was an uncle of Taurus Johnson. There Johnson remained till 1851, when he located in Kendall County. Mr. Johnson served in the war, being promoted to sergeant. After the war he returned to Newark. In 1865 he married Elizabeth Ryerson, born in Stavanger, Norway. They have had 6 children. Mr. Johnson is still living, his home being in Newark. Mr. Strand has given a very complete sketch of W.S. Weeks, to which I am indebted for these facts. His parents died in Norway when he was a child. A brother and sister also came to America at the same time. Although E.S. Holland, b. 1834, of Big Grove Township, did not settle in Kendall County before 1866, he belongs to the earlier pioneers now resident there, having come to this country with his parents in 1846. In 1854, he settled in York Township, Greene County, Wisconsin, where he married Johann Chantlin the following year. In 1866, they removed to Kendall County, Illinois. Mr. Holland has been especially active in the work of the church, and has been trustee and treasurer of Pleasant View Luther College since its organization. Mrs. Holland died in 1884, and Mr. Holland married Christina Peterson of Skien, Norway, in 1885. The name of Nels O. Kassem occupies a prominent place in the history of the settlement, as of that of Kendall County in general. Born in 1829 about 7 miles east of the city of Stavanger, Norway, he emigrated in 1849. Coming to Illinois, he settled in Fox Township, Kendall County, in July of that year. Here he purchased land and began farming, an occupation which he prospered in to an unusual degree, his estate being estimated at a little over $1 million upon his death in 1904. When he came to Illinois, writes his son, he found work on the towpath of the old Illinois and Michigan Canal at 50 cents per day. During this time, he formed the habit of saving that was the unerring guide of all his future life. Randall Kassem defines the principal causes of his father's success as health, industrious habits formed in youth, the fact that money came hard-earned at first, thus teaching him the value of the dollar, courage and self-reliance, knowing the value of little things, the practice of self-denial and rigid economy, never striving after extravagant profits in any of his undertakings. To all of this we may add his high sense of honor, his unimpeachable integrity that, as those who knew him testify, never permitted him to be other than absolutely fair, and just in all his dealings and financial transactions with others. Among those who immigrated in 1844 and located in Chicago was also Anders K. Vetty from Vettigeld, Norway. He lived in Chicago until about 1849, when he bought a farm at Yorkville Prairie in Kendall County. He married Anna Martha Ortsland in 1850 and lived there till his death in 1875. Mr. Vetty was a man of strong character and unusual intellectual endowments. He wielded much influence politically in his community and enjoyed in a high degree the confidence of those who knew him. An obituary notice says of him, "His truest and most enduring monument will be the good resulting from his labor in the cause of universal education, in untiring opposition to the superstitious observance of ceremonies incompatible with the spirit and the progress of the age, and in his hatred of all forms of political oppression." Kassem married Margaret Fritz in 1851. She died in 1872. There are 5 children: Randall Kassem, attorney at Aurora, Ill. Mrs. Olive J. Osmundson of Seward Township, Kendall County, Oscar E. Kassem, Mitchell, South Dakota, Mrs. Margaret Olson, Aurora, Illinois, and Mrs. Anna O. Rude, Chicago, Illinois. Kari Melhus of Newark, Illinois, who came to America is said to be the oldest Norwegian woman in America. She was born in H. Hjelmeland Parish, Ryfylke, in 1804. A. K. Vetty's oldest daughter, Mrs. Samuel Mather, b. 1853, of Springdale, Lynn County, Iowa, says that it was in 1849 or 1850 perhaps, but she is not certain which. The words universal education contain a reference to his fight for the common schools. A few miles south of Lisbon, across the Grundy County line, a settlement was founded in 1846. The county had been completely settled by Americans already, but Norwegians bought these out and gradually supplanted them, exactly as they began doing a decade later at Saratoga in Grundy County and have done still later in the city of Morris in the same county. The settlement is located in Nettle Creek Township. The first arrivals were Rasmus Scheldal, Ole Torstall, Paul Thompson, Michael Erickson, Simon Fry, John Wing, Lars Scheldal, Ben Hall, Ben Thornton, John Peterson, G.E. Grunstead, William and Samuel Hage. Several of these men had families. They came mostly from Skanevik. All came between 1846 and 1848. In 1849, Havard Rigg Sr. and family of 7, and Esther Nelson, wife, Jenny, and family, came from Norway and located there. Several of these men later moved away, as Paul Thompson, Michael Erickson, Rasmus Scheldal, and Ole T. Vistel, who went to Story County, Iowa, while some members of the Rigg and Wing families went to Goodhue County, Minnesota, 1856. Esther Hodgen and family moved up to Helmer, Kendall County, in 1855. The latter family included a son, Nels B. 1840, who is Nels S. Nelson of Helmer, well known as a successful farmer and a Republican leader in Kendall County. With this brief survey of the founding of these eastern extensions of the Fox River settlement, we shall leave Kendall and Grundy counties. The history of these settlements takes its beginnings at the very close of the period we are here considering. Their fuller discussion belongs to the history of the immigration of the following decade. Individual settlers and single families had located in various towns in northern Illinois during the later 30s and 40s. I shall name here Severt S. Helland and Wyfenjeborg, who immigrated in 1836 and settled at Woodstock, Illinois. Helland B. 1828 came from G. Jerdevig in F. Jelbjerg Parish. His wife was born 1825 at Helland in Etney Parish. They moved to Chicago in 1855 and in 1857 settled near Slater, Iowa. Chapter 41. The First Norwegian Pioneers in Northeastern Iowa. In this chapter, one shall give a brief account of the coming of Norwegians into northeastern Iowa and their founding of settlements there between 1846 and 1851. We are near the close of the period which this volume deals with. The founding of settlements in Iowa in 1849-50 is but a part of a larger movement now beginning, which, in the course of a few years, resulted in the establishment of numerous settlements in Wisconsin, Iowa, and southeastern Minnesota. These settlements were founded in general through internal migration away from the older settlements in Racine, Rock, and Dane counties. The latter were now becoming overcrowded, and they furnished hundreds upon hundreds of recruits to the new settlements that were fast springing up. It is with the years 1848-49 that we associate this new trend in the movement, and which inaugurates this new period in the whole movement. Only its beginnings will here briefly be sketched as related to the counties of northeastern Iowa. Of the mass of material which has been placed at my disposal, I can only select what appears most essential to the purpose. In Texas, the first county settled by Norwegians in northeastern Iowa was Clayton. The first settlers were Ole H. Val and wife and Ole T. Kittelsland, who located in Red Township in the summer of 1846. Both these men had, however, entered Iowa 3 years before. In 1843, they had come to the old Fort Atkinson in Winneshiek County and had remained there for 3 years in the service of the government. Val and Kittelsland were both from Rolog, New Middle. They had immigrated in 1841 to Rock Prairie and had from 1841-1843 worked in the Dodgeville mines. In 1846, Soren O. Sorum from Land Parish, Norway, came to Fort Atkinson, and in 1847, Ingeborg Nilsson, a cousin of Ole Val, came there. Their duties being to show the Indians how to farm, and in general, to teach them the white man's ways. In the summer of 1846, then, Val and Kittelsland located in Clayton County, buying a farm together, about 3 miles southeast of the present village of St. Olaf. Through letters from Val, the locality was soon brought to the attention of Norwegian settlers in Rock Prairie and Koshkonong. In the spring of 1849, Ole Herbrandsson and family came out there from Koshkonong. He was an immigrant from Morkvald, Rolog, in 1842, and had, it seems, visited Val in Clayton County in 1848 and found the locality to his liking. In June, Haver Nilsson Espizeth, Nut Hustad, Ole Sand, and Ingbret Skarshog came from Rock Prairie. Going to the western part of the county, Nilsson selected land in Grand Meadow Township, becoming the founder of the Clermont extension of the settlement, which, as Norwegians began to come in gradually, expanded north into Fayette and Winneshiek counties. Other arrivals of the same summer were Abraham Rustad and family, Brito A. Holt, Jens A. Holt, all from Hadeland, Bertil Osaldson, Talek Gunderson and family from Arundel, and Ole Hansen and family. These located in the Clermont region, Jens Holt on Section 17, Marion Township, and Hansen on Section 6 in the same township. About simultaneous with these, Finger Johnson, Helge Ramstad and wife, Thorkel Ideklepp Ole I Sanden, with wife Guro and family, located in the eastern settlement. The first white child born of Norwegian parents in the county was Jorund Val, Mrs. Lars Thavsen, St. Olaf, daughter of Ole Val. See article by Reverend Jacob Tanner, entitled, En Court Baritoning 50 Rs Kirkelite Arbade, Clayton County, Iowa, in Lutheraneren, 45, 1901. My facts here are gathered in large part from this article. The date was June 11th according to History of Clayton County, 1882, p. 831. The last three were from Hallingdal. According to others, these two did not arrive till 1850. Tanner's article, Sanden and Finger Johnson settled in Wagner Township. The founders of these settlements nearly all came from Rock Prairie, where they had lived the first few years after immigrating. During the years 1850-1851, a large number of immigrants joined the colony. The first of these were Lars Val, Hellik Glame, and Austin Bleekestad, all from Newmiddle, Ole Ingebrigtsen and Peter Helgesen from Sigdal in Newmiddle, and Ole Gunbjornsen and Nut Jaeger from Hallingdal, while Halstein Groth and family from Nies in Hallingdal and Kittel Rue located in the western part of the settlement. The Groth family located in Marion Township, where also James and Jacob Paulson Broby, who came from Hadeland the next year, settled. Mrs. Halger Peterson and son, Peter Halgerson, came in 1851 and settled in Wagner Township. Soren O. Sorum and wife settled in Farmersburg Township in 1850, being the first Norwegians there. See above page 143. See note on p. 213. In 1867, he moved to Wagner Township. But in the very beginning of this period, the movement was directed to the counties to the north, Alamaki and Winnesheek. The immigration of Norwegians into Clayton County had practically ceased by 1855, the chief reason for this probably being that the Germans came in very large numbers, particularly to Clayton County, during the early 50s and soon occupied all the best land. Northeastern Iowa was but little settled, and the development of the wilderness had only begun. Clayton County had in 1850 a population of 3,873, while Fayette had only 825 and Alamaki 777. The population of Winnesheek County had reached 4,957. Reverend Tanner writes, when we look at this Norwegian settlement as it was then and is today largely, it immediately strikes us that it was wood and water the colonists looked for, and therefore they let the prairie lie and chose the hills along the Turkey River. Not until later did they learn to understand the value of the prairie, but then the Germans had taken most of it. Alamaki was the next county in order of settlement. This county was opened to settlement in 1848, but land was not put upon the market before 1850. In 1849, Ole L. Rothnam, Ole O. Storlag, Ole K. Grimsgard and Eric K. Barskrand came from Rock County to Alamaki County and selected land. In 1850, they moved out with their families, and in company with them came Ole K. Stake, Arn K. Stake, Siver Wold, and Thomas A. Grana. Others who came about the same time were Thomas Anderson and wife Emily, Sven E. Hesla, Bjorn Hermansen, Nils T. Rue, Ersten Peterson, Lars Jeglum, Haveri Turkup, Ole S. Lekvald, all from Hallingdal, and Nils N. Arnesgard, who was from Newmiddle. Among others who followed the next year I shall mention Nut Knutson, G. H. Fagger and wife Catherine, and Ole Smeby, B. 1804, wife and sons Hans, Ole, and John. They settled on the prairie north of Paint Creek, living in their canvas-covered wagons until houses were built. Those here named formed the nucleus of the Paint Creek settlement, which already the next year received large accessions. The Fayette County settlement about Clermont is a western extension of the second settlement in Clayton County. Its beginnings have been referred to above. The first entry of purchase appears under the date of October, 1850. The earliest settler in the county was Henry Johnson, after whom Johnsonsport was named, but I do not know of what nationality he was. Hesla had came to America in 1845, Anderson in 1846. Settled in Mackay Township, he had came from Norway in 1849. The early settlers of Alamaki and neighboring counties experienced all the trials and hardships of pioneer life in an unsettled country. There was no railroad nearer than Milwaukee. At McGregor, there were a few stores where the necessaries of life could be had. The process of home building and the clearing of the forests was slow and often attended with many difficulties. The pioneers generally brought with them no other wealth than stout hearts and strong hands, and it was only by industry and severe economy that they were able to make a living for themselves and their families. Those who hired out to others received very small wages, and as there was little money among the pioneer farmers, this was paid in large part in food or other articles. It may serve as an illustration that in the winter of 1850, a pioneer in Clayton County split 7,000 rails of wood for 50 cents a hundred. For this, he was paid $3.50 in cash and the remainder in food. In the Clermont settlement, there was a log cabin store at the village of Clermont. This pioneer is still living. See Tanner's article. A barrel of flour at that time cost $12 in Iowa, and a bushel of corn 75 cents. The usual wages was 25 c a day, sometimes a little more. Most of the Norwegians who first settled in Alamaki County came from Rock County, Wisconsin. Later, some came from Dane County, Wisconsin, and also from Winneshiek County, where a settlement was formed in June 1850. Several, however, came from Norway by way of New Orleans and the Mississippi, as did Gilbert C. Lice in 1851. In 1856, there were in the whole county 505 Norwegians. 181 of these had settled in Paint Creek, then Waterville Township, the rest being located mostly in the neighboring towns of Center, Lafayette, Taylor, Jefferson, and Mackay. In the meantime, a new settlement had been established in the northwestern part of the county, in Hanover and Waterloo, which soon extended into Winneshiek County. But the earliest Norwegian settlement in Winneshiek was formed on Washington Prairie in June 1850, when a number of families moved in from Racine and Dane counties, Wisconsin. Eastern Winneshiek County received in the following year a large Norwegian population. The county was organized in 1850, and the first term of court convened on October 5, 1851. Those who came in the latter part of June 1850 and settled on Washington Prairie were Eric Anderson, Rudy, the brothers Ole and Stahl T. Hodgen from Flekkefjord, Ole G. Jevny, Ole and Andrew A. Lohman, Nut A. Bakken, Anders Hodge, John J. Quale, and Haver H. Groven, all from Valders, and Mikkel Omli from Telemarken. On July 3, another party headed by Nels Johnson arrived, including Tolef Simonsen A., Nud Opdal, Jacob Abrahamson, Ivor P. Quale, G. German Johnson, Kaasa, and John Thun. See above page 232. The father of Martin N. Johnson, member of Congress from North Dakota. Nelson Johnson was one of the founders of the Muskego settlement in Wisconsin in 1839. He later entered the Methodist ministry and was for 2 years, 1855–1857, pastor of the Norwegian-American Church in Cambridge, Wisconsin. With the exception of these 2 years, he lived in Winneshiek County until his death in 1882. Father of Reverend Abraham Jacobson, to whom I am in part indebted for facts on the early settlement of Washington Prairie. Reverend Jacobson has also printed a pamphlet, The Pioneer Norwegians, Decora, 1905, 16 pages, which is a most valuable contribution to the pioneer history of Winneshiek County. A very brief chapter on the pioneer Norwegians may also be found in Alexander's History of Winneshiek County, pages 180–186. A brother of Nels Johnson, Thun was from Valders. Of the coming of this party, Reverend Jacobson has given the following account. In the spring of 1850, his parents and a number of other families left Muskego to move out west. The leader of the party was Nels Johnson. He had a large military wagon drawn by 6 oxen. This had a big box on, filled with household goods and covered with white canvas. On the outside was placed, lengthwise the wagon box, several joints of stovepipe, so the outfit with a little stretch of imagination, says Reverend Jacobson, looked like a man-o'-war. This was the so-called prairie schooner. Then there were other vehicles of all sizes and shapes, from truck wagons, the wheels of which were made of solid sections of oak logs, down to the 2-wheel carts. At Koshkonong, Dane County, so many more joined them that they were in all over 100 individuals. The caravan included furthermore now 200 head of cattle, a few hogs and sheep, a mare and a colt. They drove on via Madison, then a little village, to Prairie du Chien, where the party divided one half going to Vernon County, Wisconsin, the other half to Iowa. Reverend Jacobson says of the journey at this point, "The Wisconsin River had to be crossed on a small ferry boat. The propelling power was furnished by a horse placed on a tread power which worked the paddle wheels. Only one wagon and a team at a time could be taken aboard. The herd of loose cattle had to swim over the river, all of which was accomplished without any accident worthy of note. The ferry boat at Prairie du Chien was larger and propelled by 4 mule power, but the water being high, the Mississippi River was nearly 2 miles wide, and much time was taken to get all to the western bank. 13 miles northwest from McGregor at Poverty Point, since called Monona, another halt of a creek was made. The scouting party before alluded to had visited several localities, and opinions were divided as to which was the best point to settle down. The company was now divided into 3 divisions, we going with the original leader to the vicinity of Decorah, landing on our claims on the 3rd of July. The journey had taken 5 weeks, counting from the time of starting. Those who had room enough slept under the wagon covers, the others slept on the bare ground under the wagons. The Norwegian settlement at and about Westby, Vernon Co. dates from this time, 1850. Speaking of the Indians, Reverend Jacobson says, they had their homes in the territory of Minnesota and did not molest the settlers in the least. On the banks of the upper Iowa River, many Indian graves were found. The bodies were buried in a sitting position, with the head sometimes above the ground. A forked stick put up like a post at each end of the grave held a ridge pole on which leaned thin boards, placed slanting to each side of the grave. Thus each grave presented the appearance of the gable of a small house. Of this party Simonson, Opdahl, Abrahamson, and Quale settled in Springfield, the rest in Decorah and Glenwood townships. Most of the members of these parties had come to America several years before, as Opdahl in 1848 and to Stenson in 1847. 3 of them, as we know, Rudy and the 2 Johnsons, had immigrated in 1839. The eastern 2/3 of Winneshiek County clear to the Minnesota line in a few years became extensively settled by Norwegians. A small party from Jefferson Prairie, Wisconsin, including Tor P. Scotland and his brother Endre P. Sandinger, Elef and Lars Land, natives of Ringerike, also came the same summer. These secured claims around Commer. The first list of landed assessments in Winneshiek County records the names of Jacob Abrahamson, Nud Guldbrandsen, Opdahl, Ole Gullikson Jevny, Egbert Guldbrandsen Saland, Eric Clement Scully, Haver Haverson Groven, O. A. Lohman, Ole Larsen Bergen Mikkel Omli, Tolef Simonsen, A. T. Hulverson, and Ole Testensen. According to Reverend Jacobson, the pioneer Norwegian P5, the list is for 1852. Among other settlers of 1850, not named above, I may name Nils Thronson, who had come from Valders in 1848, settling in Dane County, Wisconsin. He located in Glenwood Township in the summer of 1850. Christopher A. Estrom from Vang Parish, who had immigrated to Chicago in 1848. He came to Winneshiek County and located in Frankville Township as one of the very first Norwegians there. And Gebret Hodgen, who had immigrated in 1842, locating near Beloit, Wisconsin. The family settled near Decorah in 1850, purchasing the old Indian trading post then owned by J. G. Rice. In the fall of 1850, Johans Evensen, Ole L. Bergen, Nud L. Bergen, and Georgian Lahman came. Of these, Evensen located west of Decorah, in Madison Township, becoming the first Norwegian to settle there. As near as I can tell, Lars Iversen Meadows and family were the first Norwegians to settle in Canoe Township. Iversen, who was born at Tillung, Voss in 1802, but had married Sigrid Vikingstatter in Graven, Hardinger, 1835, and settled on the farm Meadows, emigrated to America in 1850. They spent the first winter on Liberty Prairie, Dane County, Wisconsin, and moved to Winneshiek County early in the spring of 1851, locating in Canoe Township on Section 2, where they lived till their death. Helge N. Myrand and his widowed mother, who had immigrated in and settled in Muskego County, came west and located in Madison in 1851. Iversen died in 1887, his wife in 1890. Ivar Larsen, well-known merchant and for many years treasurer of the United Norwegian Lutheran Church, who died in 1907, was a son of Iversen. The first Norwegians to enter Hesper Township were a party of immigrants who came by the ship Valhalla from Tonsberg in the summer of 1852. They were from Talgen, in northern Østerdalen, and from Roras in Guldalen, hence from a much more northerly region than their countrymen in southern Winnesheik County. The party consisted of the following: Trond Logen, John Lusen, Sr., Bent Pettersen, Ingebrigtberg, Mons Monsen, all of whom were married, and John Vald and Joachim Nelson. These were followed in the next year by John S. Lusen, Jr., and Ole B. Andersen Boren. Among the earliest settlers from other regions were Paul Thorsen, Salve Olsen and Torjus Gundersen from Cedarstalen, Nut Herbrandsson and Christian Lien from Hallingdal, Odny Glamin and family from Voss, Lars Backa and Bendik Larsen from Son, and Petter Wenz from Vardalen. They were the first emigrants to America from this district. For the facts on Hesper Township, I am indebted to Mr. J.A. Nelson of Prosper, Minnesota, a student in the State University of Iowa. From the towns of Springfield, Decorah, and Glenwood, the settlement thus soon spread into the neighboring townships north into Canoe, Hesper, and Highland, where it united with the settlement in northwestern Alamaki County, and south through the towns of Commer and Military, uniting with the settlement in north-central Fayette County in Dorr Township. This last settlement extends through Pleasant Valley, southward into Clayton County. Together these settlements form the eastern part of Clayton County, west through Fayette, and north through Winnesheik to northern Alamaki. In Alamaki it extends as far as Harper's Ferry and Lansing. The bulk of the population, however, is found in Winnesheik County. The principal Norwegian townships are Glenwood, Decorah, Springfield, Madison, and Highland. About half of the population of the county is of Norwegian birth, or of that descent. Chapter 42. Survey of Immigration from Norway to America. Conclusion. We are then at the end of our task. We discussed at first early individual immigration from Norway down to the year 1825. Then, tracing briefly the fortunes of the party of immigrants who came from Norway that year, we followed the subsequent immigration, year by year, down to 1848, and the founding of settlements in this country from Orleans County, New York, in 1825 to Winnesheik County, Iowa, in 1850. The growth of the emigration movement in Norway and the course of settlements here have been indicated. The names of the promoters of emigration in each district and province, and of the founders of settlements, have in all cases been given. In most cases, we have succeeded in giving a fairly complete list of names of the settlers in any community during the first 4 to 8 years of its history. That is its period of growth, the years during which it assumed the character of a Norwegian settlement. The varied causes of emigration were also discussed at some length, as also other questions, as the cost of passage and duration and course of the journey. And in the discussion of the individual settlements, we have now and then given a glimpse of the general conditions of life in early pioneer days. I desire now, by way of conclusion, to summarize briefly the course of emigration in Norway and the distribution of the representatives of each district in this country. The first emigrants from Norway were from Stavanger, Haugesund, and Ryfylke. Before 1836, the movement did not reach out beyond these districts, although a few individuals had come from Sondhordland and Hardanger. The emigration from Hardanger begins properly in 1836. That year also records the first arrivals from Voss. However, most of the immigrants of that year, as the following 2 years, were from the districts that had furnished the emigrants of the decade 1825-1835. The year 1837 is especially noteworthy for the sailing of the first emigrant ship from Bergen, and that the immediate vicinity of Bergen for the first time furnished its quota of the emigration. It is further significant in that Voss now enters definitely into the movement, and that Upper Telemarken and the neighboring region of West Newmiddle contributed the first recruits to the American settlements. The emigrants of 1839 came in considerable part from Upper Telemarken, from Newmiddle, from Voss and Hardanger, but not a few also from the older districts. This continued in 1840 and 1841, except that there were no emigrants from Hardanger during these 2 years and very few for the next 4 years also. In 1842, the first party left San, and in 1844 and 1845, considerable numbers came to America from this district. The year 1843 is especially noteworthy for the very large emigration of that year from Upper Telemarken and the growth of the movement in new parishes in New Middle. In this year, also the America fever enters Lower Telemarken, a number of families going to America from Holden Parish and Cragero, which in 1844-1845 expands to include Sand and Bow and the region of Skene. During 1843, the first emigrants also leave Cedarstalen, and from now on it is to be observed that there is a steady outgoing of emigrants from Ryfolk and Sandhordland for the period of nearly a decade. The movement is also beginning to expand in two other directions, north from New Middle into Hallingdal, and soon after northeast from the region of the Sognefjord up to northern and the extreme inner San. The influx of immigrants from Telemarken and New Middle continues, and in increased numbers from Voss, and the movement begins anew in Hardanger in 1846. Hallingdal sent forth a large number of families and single persons in 1846-47, most of whom, as we know, settled in Rock and Lafayette counties, Wisconsin, many later moving into Iowa. In 1847-48, these two movements meet in Valdres, the one from Hallingdal entering first in South and North Audal, the other from Lairdal and Ardal in San, entering about 1850 into Vang, Hurum and West Slitter in Valdres. In the meantime, the movement has traveled also from Lower Telemarken, Drammen and Eastern New Middle Sigdal, up through Ringerike, Hadeland and Land. Especially large was the emigration from North and South Land clear to Torpen in 1847-1850. The region east of Land, i.e., Toten, Hedmarken and Saler, furnish occasional immigrants from now on, but not in considerable numbers until many years later. From Land and from Valdres, the movement grows northward into Gudbrandsdalen and northwestward into Østerdalen and Trondheim, from which provinces, however, relatively very few emigrated to America until after 1850, and the emigration was not heavy from this region or from the northern coast districts, Sandfjord, Nordfjord, Sandmoor, Nordmoor until after the Civil War. At least 18 persons from Hardanger and 2 from Voss. And from Nordland not until after 1875. It is to be observed also that the emigration from the older inland districts was very heavy clear down to 1890. As to the number of immigrants that each of the districts had contributed to the American population before 1850, or have down to the present time, it would be difficult to say. The emigration from such vast districts as Telemarken and San, as later from Gudbrandsdalen, Hedmarken and Østerdalen, has been heaviest, while from Ryfolk and Voss the incoming settlers have been very numerous, as also from the small but very populous Sandhordland, Hadeland and Land. Valdres and Hallingdal, each about half as large as San, have contributed perhaps each about one-third as many immigrants as San, each contributing about equally to the American emigration. Relatively small has been the immigration from Hardanger, Cedarstalen, and the vicinity of Stavanger. The extensive districts of Telemarken and San entered early into the movement and have continued down to the present time to furnish large numbers of recruits to the Norwegian immigrant population. Representatives of these two regions, the immigrated and their descendants, are, I believe, most numerous among the various groups of Norwegian settlers in America. In 1891, Hallingdal had a population of 12,900, Valdres 17,000, San 37,050, Sandhordland 34,750, Hardanger 25,900, Ryfolk 000, Telemarken 44,000, Cedarstalen 8,380. The population of each is much larger now. In this country, the relative position of the representatives of each is about that which they occupied in the old. This finds its reason chiefly in the time at which the different states were opened up to settlers. Natives from Stavanger, Ryfolk, and Sandhordland are found chiefly in Illinois and in the settlements of central Iowa, Benton, and Story counties. In Illinois are located also in large numbers natives of Hardanger, Lee County, and Voss, Chicago, but only to a very limited extent those of other districts. In southern Wisconsin, and to a slight extent in the adjacent parts of Illinois, have located especially the natives of New Middle, and to some extent those of land and San. Natives of San have, however, found homes most extensively in the various settlements of Wisconsin and Minnesota and northern Iowa. Here they are present in all parts of the states, but in largest numbers in the oldest settlements in southern and western Wisconsin and in southeastern Minnesota. Natives of Telemarken are found well scattered, from their original center in Racine County through Walworth and Dane counties, thence to central Wisconsin and Minnesota. The representatives of Valders are found in largest numbers in western Dane County, in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, and in Goodhue County, Minnesota. In Winneshiek and Worth counties, where also natives of Hallingdal have settled in large numbers. It will not be possible to discuss here the later development of the various settlements that have been treated above, or the increase of the Norwegian factor in the counties where these settlements were formed. Space forbids this, and these facts have, furthermore, been briefly indicated elsewhere in this volume. Thus, in Chapter 2, we have outlined the extent of immigration from Norway and the geographical distribution of settlements, while the subsequent history of the special settlements has often been briefly indicated. It may here be added that the counties in southern Wisconsin as a whole enjoyed a much more rapid development during the years 1840-1850 than those of northern Illinois, and that this was due in a very large measure to the incoming of such a large number of settlers from Norway in the best years of their life. Similarly, the Norwegian county of La Salle in Illinois was the leading county in that part of Illinois in the same period, its population in 1850 being 17,815, that of Grundy 023, and DeKalb 7,540. In the year 1900, the principal Norwegian counties among those that fall within the scope of the discussion in this volume were in order: Cook County, Illinois; Dane County, Wisconsin; Winneshiek County, Iowa; Milwaukee County, Wisconsin; Rock County, Wisconsin; and La Salle County, Illinois. It has elsewhere in this volume been shown that Wisconsin early became the objective point of immigrants from Norway. This significant position in Norwegian-American history, Wisconsin, continued to hold throughout the whole period we have discussed and for a long time afterwards. In 1850, 50% of all Norwegians in the United States were domiciled within the borders of the state of Wisconsin. It was with Wisconsin that the chief events in early Norwegian-American history are associated. The principal scenes in the great pioneer drama were enacted here. As all the paths of the Norwegian immigrant in that early day led to Wisconsin, so the threads of all subsequent Norwegian history in America lead back to Wisconsin. Whether in material welfare, in church, in politics, or in education, it was in Wisconsin that the Norwegian first made a place for himself in America and laid the foundation for all his later progress. Barring the relatively very small Norwegian factor in the cities of the East, which stands practically isolated from Norwegian-American life. At the same time, we must not forget that the era of settlement began in Illinois, and Illinois has always continued to hold a prominent place in Norwegian-American history. Appendices. Appendix I. Table I. Showing the growth and distribution of the foreign Scandinavian factor by decades in the northwestern states, and in sections elsewhere 1,860 Michigan, 276-16, 445-41, 496, 928 Wisconsin, 885 23,265 48, 057 66, 280 499, 738. 103, 942 Illinois, 631 12,073 44, 570 65, 414 128,897 144, 812 Iowa 7, 814 31, 177 46, 046 72, 873, 611 Minnesota, 11,773. 58, 837 107, 768 215,215 236, 670 Nebraska, 987 16, 685 46, 341, 107 North Dakota, 34, 216, 578, 674 17, 868 South Dakota, 31 372, 473 total in Northwest 13, 278 56,275 193, 578 336, 511 670,148 715, 121 New England 1, 507, 113. 11 240 343, 606, 632 New York, New Jersey. 897 4, 506 12, 291 28, 492 75, 331 105, 641 Pennsylvania. The South 0841, 531, 189 081 5 936, 646 All other states 0678, 763 29, 497 59, 935. 138,328 166, 525 total outside Northwest, 797 16, 307 48, 090 103, 740 1 263,201 350, 444 total, 0 75 72, 582 240 1,668, 440, 252, 930 3,349, 1,065,565. Not including Missouri. Table Roman II. Showing the growth of the Norwegian foreign-born population in each state by decades in 1,850 Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts 2, 519 3, 335 Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York 2, 185 8, 602 12, 601 New Jersey 1, 317 2, 296 Maryland, Delaware District of Columbia, Pennsylvania 2, 238. 1, 393 Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, 415 4, 891 11, 880 16, 970 30, 339 29, 979 Michigan 1, 516 3, 527, 795. 7 582 Wisconsin, 651 21, 442 40, 0 46 49, 349 65, 696 61, 575 Iowa 5, 688 17, 554 21, 583 27, 0 78 25, 634 Minnesota 8, 425 35, 940. 62, 521, 101,169 104, 895 Kansas 1, 358 1, 786 1, 477 Nebraska 2, 0 10 3, 632 2, 833 South Dakota 1, 179 13, 245, 19,257 19, 788 North Dakota 25,773 30, 206 Wyoming, Colorado 1, 149 Oklahoma, Texas 1, 313 1, 356 Arizona, Utah 1, 214 1, 854 2, 128 Nevada, Idaho 1, 173 New Mexico, California 1, 0001, 765 3, 702 5, 0 60 Oregon 2, 271 2, 789 Washington 8, 324 9, 891 Montana 1, 957 3, 354 total, 407 43, 695, 114,246, 181,696, 302,721, 335,726. Table Roman III. Showing the Norwegian foreign parentage population in the United States according to the U.S. Census for 1900. Minnesota 959, Wisconsin 125, North Dakota 012, Iowa 170, Illinois 954, South Dakota 199, New York 928, Washington 824, Michigan 09110, California 53611, Nebraska 22812, Montana 68813, Oregon 56714, Massachusetts 06915, Utah 557-16, Kansas 731-17, New Jersey 518-18, Texas 406-19, Idaho 767-20, Pennsylvania 254-21, Colorado 096-22, Alaska 454-23, Missouri 301-24, Ohio 174-25, Connecticut 083-26, Indiana 27, Maine 28, Wyoming 29, Florida 30, New Hampshire 31, Rhode Island 32, Maryland 33, Louisiana 34, Tennessee 35, Alabama 36, Hawaii 37, Oklahoma 38, Virginia 39, Georgia 40, Arizona 41, Mississippi 42, District of Columbia 43, Arkansas 44, Indian Territory 45, Nevada 46, Vermont 47, Kentucky 48, South Carolina 49, Delaware 50, West Virginia 51, North Carolina. Appendix Roman II. Names of parishes and settlements in Norway, see page 131. Especiall 2, Kopervik 3, Taninger 4, Ardal 5, Vikdal 6, Hjelmeland 7, Skanevik 8, Vinge 9, Mo 10, Flatdal 11, Siljord 12, Hviteseid 13, Laudal 14, Nisetdal 15, Moland 16, Drdad 17, Sandokdal 18, Bamel 19, G. Jerpin 20, Porsgrund 21, Heiderdal 22, Rolog 23, Nor 24, Sigdal 25, Flesberg 26, Lyngdal 27, Eggedal 28, Haven 29, Tin 30, Bow 31, Holden 32, Slemdal 33, Sandsverd 34, Ecker 35, Modum 36, Lyre 37, Skodger 38, Sand 39, Cavendherd 40, Odd 41, Jondal 42, Vicar 44, Ulvik 45, Vasavangen 46, Vasastranden 47, Evanger 48, Graven 49, Samnanger 50, Vik 51, Åland 52, Lairdal 53, Leckinger 54, Sogndal 55, Ardal 56, Lister 57, Jostedal 58, F. Jurland 59, Balestrand 60, Borgund 61, Hemsedal 62, Gall 63, Nies 64, Fla 65, Sonder Audal 66, Norder Audal 67, Vester Slitter 68, Erster Slitter 69, Hurum 70, Vang 71, Norderland 72, Sonder Land 73, Vardal 74, Biri 75, Ringsaker 76, Ullensaker 77, Faubourg 78, Rendelin 79, Vaj 80, Frone 81, Lesch 82, Ede 83, Selbu 84, Soknedalen 85, Rindalen. Bibliography. The brief bibliography here given is not intended to be complete. The books and articles spoken of in the foreword of this volume, pages 7-9, are not relisted here. Anderson, Rasmus B. Bygdeevening. Madison, Wise, 1903, pp. Roman 6 plus 215, has very little historical value, a series of uncritical contributions. Flom, George T. Chapters on Scandinavian Immigration to Iowa, Iowa City, 1905, pp. Roman 4 plus 150, a brief survey. Hadelstad, O.J. Historisk Meddelulser om den Norsk Augustana Synod, Decorah, Iowa, 1887, pp. 254. Holland, H. Hjalmar R. de Norsk Settlementers History. Ephraim Wise, 1908, pp. 603. A series of brief surveys on pages 105-65 of most of the settlements down to 1865, unfortunately in part uncritical. Keyes, Judge E. W. History of Dane County. Madison, Wisconsin, 1906. Volumes I. Roman 3. Scandinavian matter very incomplete and often erroneous. Names frequently misspelled. K. Vardal Skrift. Udgivit of det Norsk Selskab I Amerika. Waldemar Ager, Redactor IV, 1905-1909. Various articles, usually very good. Langeland, Nud, Nordmindien I Amerika. Chicago, 1889. pp. 224 fragmentary. Nelson, O. N. History of the Scandinavians and Successful Scandinavians in the United States. Minneapolis, Min. 1901, volumes I Roman II. A series of articles by various contributors and a large number of biographies, in general very reliable. Normans Forbundet, I Roman II, 1907-1909. A number of excellent articles of real permanent value. Peck Geo W. ed., Cyclopedia of Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, 1906, volumes I Roman II. Scandinavian biographies, etc., often full of errors. Ulvestad Martin, Normandien I America, Deres History og Record, Minneapolis, 1907, pp. 871. Index. Auberge Petter S. 312. Odland Nud, 162. Odland Mons, 100, 103, 112, 158, 161, 162, 222, 283. Odland Thomas, 162, 280. Aand Haver N, 211. Amat Anders, 220. Amat Christopher, 298. Aratun Anna, 287. Aratun Nut, 266, 269, 270. Aratun Nut K, 285, 287. Orhus Rasmus J, 37. Orhus Reir, 342. Arnus Angon, 338. Aaz Islak, 286. Aaz Haver N, 143, 144. Aaz Lars C. Skavlem Lars. As Anders E, 276. As Hans H, 338. As Las E, 276, 310. As Thor, 340. Asen Haver, 148. Asen Haver, 261. Asen Nils, 302. Asland Ole, 118, 119, 222. Asnes Ole T, 188. Avri Anders O, 273. Avri Johans O, 273. Avri Ole J, 273. Abrahamson, Jacob, 369, 371. Aga, John J, 95. Allen Mrs. Margaret, 4560. Allen William, 4976. Anderson Arnold A, 178. Anderson Austin, Andrew 93, 355. Anderson Andrew, 238. Anderson A.S. 59. Anderson Anderson G. 58. Anderson Arl, 232. Anderson K. Velv, Bjorn 93, 110, 175, 176, 178, 179, 180, 256. Anderson Dan K. 8, 304. Anderson Eric, 232, 348. Anderson Eric A. Anderson Haver, 291. Anderson John, 337, 338. Anderson J.C., 235. Anderson John A., 238, 284. Anderson K. Gel, 337, 338. Anderson Lars O., 149. Anderson Martha, 235. Anderson Ole 13. Anderson Ole 147, 159, 202. Anderson Ole 344. Anderson Ole O 312. Anderson Peter S 304. Anderson RB 9, 37, 47, 56, 66, 103, 173, 191. Anderson Susanna 93. Anderson William 348. Andrewson Reverend O 209. Anshin Peter M 286. Anmarksred Tolef S 343. Arnesgard Nils 366. Arveson Hans 290, 293. Arveson Harvey 8, 290, 293, 294. Arveson Isaac 290. Arveson John 292. Arveson Ole 290. Asdaldalen Nut 260. Askeland Andrew 125. Atwater John 60. Barson Bowerson Nut 345. Barson, Lars, 208. Backe, Soren, 156, 158, 159, 160. Backe, Tolifo, 156. Baker, Bajer, John, 251. Baker, Mrs. Ole, 345. Baker, P.O., 345. Backa, Lars, 373. Back, Hans H., 285. Back, Olje, 218. Backen, Olo, 342. Backen, Tideman, 342. Backatun, Anna, 150, 233. Backatun, Nils, 235. Backatun, Ole, 236. Backley, Kittle, 261. Backley, Nutke, 261. Backley, Mrs. Ole, 186. Barleyan, Hans, 108, 110, 123, 192, 193, 197. Barstad, Olgi, 188. Barton, Ole, 342. Bodge, Thomas, 100. Bora, Matthias, 295. Barons, Captain, 78, 100. Bago, A.T., 217. Beck-Jordan, Sinovke, 261. Belgum, Nilzo, 343. Bendixson, Capt., 267. Benson, John, 276. Benson, Ole, 277. Burdal, Eli I, 311. Burdal, Ole, 273. Bera, Petter, 208. Berg, LFA, 260. Berg, Eric K., 218. Berg, Ingebrigt. Berg, Trolls, 218. Bergen, Ole L., 371. Burge, Herbrand H., 212. Burge, John I., 285, 340, 341. Burge, Kari, 283. Bergen, Agun, 281. Bergen, Hans, 36. Bergfam, Jensby, 307. Berglind, Gunhild, 254. Bergrud Lever, 186. Bergrud Torstein L., 186. Bergum Botolf E., 333. Barry BK, 168. Bilden Nils, 90. Bjalland, Thorsten O., 47, 55, 56, 62, 101, 175, 177, 178, 181, 256. Bjelda, Johans Casey Melas, J.K. Bjelda, Torsten O., 307. Bjerva, Anders G., 292. Bjoin Bjan, Anand H., 163, 278. Bjoin Haver, 279, 343, 348. Bjono Go, 138, 139. Bjorgaz George J., 287. Bjorgo John H., 62, 101, 113, 182. Bjorndaken Anders J., 292. Bjornson Bjorn 50, 239. Bjornson Elef, 298. Bjornson Gabriel 260, 263. Bjordeft Ragnhild. Bjordeft Thorgrim O. Blakestad Skavlum GH, 207. Blegeberg Gunder H. Blay Esther S., 352. Bloom Captain 301. Bogstrandiet Ole P., 206. Bowley Ole, 343. Bolstad Nils L., 62, 101, 113, 168, 171, 174, 175, 181. Borlang BJ, 344. Boren Ole B. Anderson, 373. Boyam Arn, 332. Broughton Olo, 343. Brekito Bjorn, 272. Brendan Ole T., 343. Brendingen Marthia, 214. Brenna Hans H., 302. Brimso Lars L., 93. Bringa Ole, 269. Bringa Tostein G., 245. Broby Jacob P., 365. Brock Captain 310. Brown Lewis 40. Bruevalden Ole, 203. Bruevalden Esther T., 202, 203. Brudvig Ingebrigt 100, 102. Brunkow Mrs. Martha, 304. Brunsvold Ola, 217. Brunsvold Isle, 217. Breek Andersen, 150. Breek Helik N, 143, 145. Breek Nud, 150, 185. Breekhyet Halstein, 109, 110. Buend Ole I, 186. Bukasa Hans, 294. Buo Guttorm, 312. Burtness John, 217. Burtness Timon, 217. Busness K. Jiddle, 278. Bystolen Magni B, 150, 168 171. Beekes Alexander O, 252. Beekes John, 257. Beekes Tolef, 257. Bo Bardlausen, 200. Bo Chrisen M, 292. Bo Nut L, 182, 235. Bo Lars, 93. Bo Michael, 93. Calberlane Dr. John M, 3839. Campbell Mitchell, 167. Cantesson Oliver, 57. Karstensen Cleese, 3657. Kassam Nelzo, 358. Kassam Randall, 358. Chelly Lars, 355. Christensen Christian, 39. Christiansen Hans, 348. Clement Eric, 371. Clevin Egil O, 283. Clausen Reverend C.F., 145. Kali S.G., 137. Dahl Indra Andrew, 47, 55, 59. Dahl Haver E., 260. Dahl Nut, 346. Dalbitten Bodolf, 343. Dalbitten John Michelson, 343. Dalbitten Martha, 343. Dalbitten Randy Bodolfstatter, 343. Dahl Johans, 276. Dahl Hans J, 345. Dahl Leif J, 338. Dahl O.B., 280, 346, 347. Dahl Svenning N, 331. Dahlen Anders, 278. Dalen Lars, 129. Dale John J, 163, 283. Dale Paul, 95. Dale Esther, 95. Dalos Anon, 295. Dalsteel Haver H, 188. Danielson Christopher, 96, 114. Danielson Giddle, 120, 222, 224, 227. Danielson Nud, 96. Danielson Ole, 345. Darnell Sarah, 113. Dean Erastus, 136. DeGean Joseph, 167. Dietrichson Reverend J.W.C., 87, 94, 144, 185, 210, 313. John Torbjorn, 95. Doxred Haver H, 281. Doxred Haver I, 281. Doxred Ingebret H, 281. Donstead Haver, 254. Downer Stephen, 137. Doyle Simon, 231. Draxvald Niels, 271. Draxvald Ole, 271. Draxvald Esger C, 260, 271. Drotning Amund O, 248, 283. Dugstad Brynhild, 207. Dugstad Lars, 150, 175, 177, 179, 180. Dugstad Eric K, 207. Dustered Lars B, 340. Dustered Petter, 340. Dykisten Lars K, 236. Dealand Ole K, 81, 85, 246. Divik Ole, 101, 113. Edgery Daniel D, 137, 205. Eggum Anna L, 260. Eggum Lars, 333. Ide Nud Olsen, 44, 46, 49. Ide Nud Olsen, 96. Ide Ole Thompson, 96. Ielsen Elling, 75, 156, 158, 161, 278, 280, 347. Einarsson, Nils, 342, 344. Eideklepp, Thorkel, 364. Ellingstatter, Anna, 338. Ellingson, Elim, 8, 275, 276, 277. Ellingson, Elling, 207. Ellingson, Endre, 276. Ellingson, Majla, 207. Ellingson, Nils, 276. Ellsberg, Gulbrand, 342. Enerson, Enert, 39. Engebretson, MJ, 8, 203. Ingebrigtsen, Ole, 365. Engen, Odny, 217, 218. Engen, Anders, 213, 267. Engen, Eric, 343. Engen, Hans, 213, 217. Engen, Murray, 213. Engesiter, Eric, 331. Engesiter, Mitchell J, 267, 269, 270. Engesiter, John, 331. Erdal, Ingebrigt, 312. Erdal, Johans, 312. Erdal, Nikolai, 312. Eriksson, Mrs. Martha, 239, 240. Eriksson, Michael, 360. Eriksson, Nils, 45, 47, 54. Espe, Larzo, 352, 354. Espelland, Ersten, 101, 114. Espizeth, Haveren, 364. Esterly, George, 292. Estrom, CHR, A, 372. Evans, Dr. and C, 89. Evanson, Christian, 346. Evanson, Ragnald, 346. Evanson, Chrisen, 218. Evenson, Hadel, 295. Evenson, Nut, 52. Fadniz, Ragnald, 342. Fager, GH, 366. Falk, ON, 9. Farnes, Eric C., 331. Farnes, Ole H., 331, 332. Farnes, Trulls E., 332. Felland, Gunder, 243. Fellows, Joseph, 48. Fen, David L., 201, 202. Fen, Ivar, 203. Fen, Martha, 203. Fen, Nils, 201, 202. Fen, per 203. Fersen, Baron Axel, 41. Fingelpladsen, Gunder, 129. Finno, Anders, 149, 150, 171. Finseth, AK, 218. Finseth, Herbrand, 218. Finseth, Nutke, 218. Fisher, Captain, 310. Fjeld, Nils H., 87. Fjo, C. Kittelsen. Fjosny, Ann, 295. Flom, Anders J., 306, 309. Flage, Anders, 150, 231. Flatland, Elling O., 268. Flatter, Thormod S., 285. Fleisram, Eric S. Flitter, Esther, 295. Flom, Anders O., 266, 306. Flom, Ole Torjussen, 265, 266, 269, 270, 306, 309. Flom, Gulake T., 266. Flom, Hans T., 309. Flom, Nut T., 266. Flom, Margaret A., 219. Flom, M09. Flom, Ole O., 71, 266, 306. Flom, Torges, 266. Falmer, George, 135. Fosliet, Helic, 187. Foslian, even F, 208. Fossheim, Haver L, 245. Fossheim, Ole L, 246. Fossum, Hovel, 215. Fossum, Ingebrigt, 214. Frankraj, Johan, 214. Frankraj, Esjugel, 215. Freyes, Captain Hans, 287. Frondel, John J., 307, 338. Fruland, Lars, 112. Fry Simon, 360. Froland Nils, 100-112. Froland Petter, 334-336. Frostley Bertha, 214. Frostley Helene, 215. Frostley Merritt, 214. Frosliet Hansen Jen, 214. Fuggelg Jordet, Ingebrigt, 203, 274, 303. Fuggelstad Mrs. Bertha, 239, 240. Funkelian Haver, 185. Foley Ivar, 274. Foley Joe, 274. Foley Larzo, 274. Garden Forstein T, 188. Garter Gudbrand, 213. Garter Helene, 213. Garter Ole, 214. Garter Peter H, 213, 220, 222. Garter Siver, 214, 220. Gabriel Haver, 348. Gangsay Ole, 345. Garden Ole T, 340. Gassman Capped Hands, 297. Gassman Capped Johan, 291, 297, 298. Gilbertson Ole, 233. Gilbertson Rachel, 134. Gilderhus Anna, 150. Gilderhus Nils S, 149, 168 170, 174, 183, 185. Gilderhus Ole K, 150, 181, 182, 185, 233, 271. Gilderhus Ole S, 152, 200. Gilderhus Stefan K, 117, 233, 271. G. Gersmy, Petter J, 309. G. Gersmy, Torbjörn O, 309. G. Jellum, Joseph J, 305. G. Jellum, Lars G, 307. G. Jellum, Simon A, 307, 308. G. Gerd, Johans L, 312. G. Gerd P. de RL, 184, 267, 270. G. Gerding, Jakob I, 268. G. Gerdit, Jonas, 214. G. Jergjord, Aslako, 253. G. Jergjord, Havero, 253. G. Jerstad, Lars, 117, 126. G. Gilge, Peter O, 192, 197. G. Jostein, Nud, 150. Glame Helic, 143, 144, 364. Glenna Haver, 295. Glim Nudai, 236. Goeransen, Reverend Andrew, 42. Grain Lars, 207. Grain Ole, 182. Grain Rasmus, 182. Grain Esther, 207. Grain Tolef, 295. Grastilin Haver H, 340, 341. Grastilin Nels H, 340. Gravdal Gilbert, 145. Gravdal Gullick O, 138, 139, 140, 144, 222. Gravdal Ole, 144, 145. Gravdal Toli, 144, 145. Gravdal Sarah, 145. Grave Grow, 281. Grellet Stephen, 76. Grimstad Klaus, 152, 200, 233. Grimskard Lars, 217. Grimskard Ole K, 366. Grimsrud Helge S, 249, 250. Grimsrud Sigurd, 249. Grind Bodolf J, 305. Grind Ole A, 343. Grind Esther, 332. Grindemelum, 301. Gromstu Torgus T, 41. Gromstelen Peter J, 301. Grov Eric L, 305. Groven Aslak E, 246. Groven HH, 368, 371. Grunstad GE, 360. Grana Thomas A, 366. Gronstein Esberg, 292. Gronstein Johans, 292. Gronstein John, 292, 294. Gronstein Ole I, 291. Groth Halstein, 365. Grotred Gunhild, 263. Grotred Nils T, 262. Gudbranson Eric, 206. Gilak Toli C. Gravdal. Gulberg Arn. Gulbranson Gulbrand, 206. Guldbranson Christie, 263. Guldbranson Mari, 186. Gullikson Ole, 371. Gulliksrud Torsten Ingebrigtsen, 111. Gulseth Even, 295. Gulfstadter Martha, 307. Gunnel Mrs., 139, C. Erdegarden. Gunderson Anders, 292. Gunderson Ashley, 203. Gunderson Talak, 364. Gunnelson Ole, 173. Gudormson Gul, 220. Gul Gultorm, 220. Gval Johannes J, 338. Gvale Tolef H, 312. Halheim Esther, 95. Holland Siver O, 295, 296. Hotvet Christopher S, 293. Hotvet Even, 208. Hotvet Ole, 292. Hotvet Ole A, 208, 252. Hav Eric I, 303. Hav Elling, 273. Hav Ingebriet, 273. Hav Ivarai, 273. Hav John L, 273. Hav Lars Jensen, 274. Hav Lars J, 273, 274. Hav Ole L, 273. Havared Jull, 345. Hadland Steinar E, 208. Hadley Peter, 296. Hage Samuel, 360. Hall Ben, 360. Hallen Ciofsey Johnson. Halland Gile, 137, 138, 143. Halringa Mons, 270. Halston Ever, 342, 343. Havorson Goodman, 356. Haverson Gunder O, 149. Haverson Haver, 145, 298. Haverson Mrs. John, 263. Haverson Cleophas C. Hansimone. Haverson Lars, 342, 345. Haverson Toliv. Hammer Jewel G, 187, 261. Hansimone Eric, 216. Hansimone Haverk C. Cleophas. Hansimone Hans C. Husimone. Hansimone Cleophas H, 216, 217, 220. Hansen Hans, 36. Hansen Alex H, 154. Hansen C.F., 154. Hansen Klaus, 293. Hansen Hans, 292. Hansen Ole, 364. Hansen Ole H, 154. Hansen Mrs. W. O., 145. Harold Fairhair, 83. Harlow John, 167. Harrison General, 201. Harrysville Nud K, 237. Harrysville Marin K, 238. Harstad K. Jojai, 281. Harvig Henry C., 47, 54, 57. Hassel Aver, 302. Hasslerud Peter P., 344. Hastevet Peter K., 293. Hastevet Torger, 345. Haddelstad Anna, 284. Haddelstad Jens O, 284, 286. Haddelstad OJ, 286. Hagaz Gudmund, 47, 55, 57. Hagen Nutt, 283. Hodge Anders, 368. Hodge Haver N, 347, 348. Hodge Hans Nielsen, 75, 279. Hodgen Andreas, 129. Hodgen Bard, 101, 113. Hodgen and Jebret, 372. Hodgen G. Germund, 133. Hodgen Gunnel, 133. Hodgen Haver P., 127, 128, 129, 130. Hagen Hans G, 127, 133. Hagen Kjetil, 281. Hagen Nut, 283. Hagen Nils, 217, 222. Hagen Ole, 43, 44. Hagen Ole O, 188. Hagen Ole T, 368. Hagen Petter, 129. Hagen Stahl T, 368. Hagered Anfin A, 271. Hagered Lars, 129. Holt Haver P, 281, 282. Hakas Hans O, 338. Hakelian Lars P, 260. Hakness Ole, 332. Hakam Ole O, 281, 283. Havi Sihiv Ole. Havredalen Torbjorn, 188. Hakos Tolifo, 338. Hayer A, 115. Hedajord Edward, 283. Hedajord Liv, 283. Hedajord Ole O, 283. Hedel Nutke, 286. Hedel Matthias, 286. Hedel Peter, 286. Heft Bjorn, 295. Heft John A, 236. Heg Even H, 159, 160, 161, 183, 187, 201, 222, 246, 284. Heg Hansi, 161, 284. Heg Ole I, 284. Hegland Mrs. Anna, 356. Hi Ole, 217. Higher Ole, 115. Helgeson Eric, 297. Helgeson G. Germund, 192. Helgeson Peter, 365. Helgeson Tor, 206. Hel Ingebrigt J, 81, 227, 251. Hel Meta, 45. Hel Thomas, 45. Hemsing Ole H, 312. Hemsing Ole O, 312. Henderson Bringel, 236. Hendricks Anakin, 37. Hendricks Hellige, 36, 37. Hendrickson Charles, 341. Hendrickson Christian, 202, 341. Hendrickson Henry, 341. Herbranson Ole, 363. Herr Nils, 295. Herstal Cornelius N, 46, 54, 55. Herstal Nels N, 47, 56, 59. Hesgard Haver, 217, 218. Hesla Isle, 217. Hesla Svend E, 217. Hedultvet Jacob O, 192, 197. Hedultvet KO 92. Hedultvet Ole Olsen, 47, 56, 57, 59, 62, 89, 355. Hiddle C. John Hill. Hilbateson Eric, 206. Hilbateson Jas, 206. Hill John, 93, 355, 356. Himmel Amund, 334. Himmel Odd J, 101, 113, 168, 171, 310, 334. Hip Ole H, 312. Heiser Lena, 132. Hoff Arn, 343. Hoff Harold, 343. Hojensen Ole, 159. Halgerson Gunnel, 206. Holland Bjorn, 295. Holland E.S., 357. Holmes Joshua, 135. Holmes Thomas, 135. Holmes William, 135. Hollow Lars J, 153, 262. Hollow Martin, 262. Holt Brito, 364. Holt Daniel, 347. Holt Jens, 364. Holton Gudbrand G, 261. Holton Helico, 212. Holton Lever, 259, 260. Holton Nils T, 263. Holton Ole, 248. Holton Ole G, 261, 262. Holton Levi, Sealever Holton. Husebo Ole I, 332. Hallum Stephen, 332. Hulvin Islak 96. Hom Reverend G, 284. Hom John, 284. Homstad Matthias, 286. Homstad Ole, 286. Hornif Geld, Amund Andersen, 92, 175, 176, 179, 256. Haugen John O, 251. Havdelian Ole, 215. Hove Eric E, 201, 203. Hove Ivor, 69. Hovland G. Gert, 52, 56, 61, 62, 80, 83, 222. Hovland Haver N, 354. Hoym Christopher T. Hulderone C. Tellefsen. Hundir Anders S., 312. Hunkshiolen Jens, 281. Husebo Ole I, 267, 269, 270. Husebo Sineva, 247. Husimone Hans, 216, 217. Husimone Kari, 217. Huset Haver, 291. Huset Ole, 291. Huset Tolef Gunnufsen, 281. Husevald John, 281. Hustad Nut, 364. Hustvet Bjorn O, 254. Hustvet Bjorn S, 254. Husverit Torkild, 302. H. Vashovd, Gunder G, 186. H. Vashovd, Helik G, 186. Hiddle Esther, 295. Hill Nud J, 152, 200, 201. Heave Henrik O, 248, 271. Heave Ole, 248. Hogstall Osmond O, 295. Hogstall Tostein H, 295. Hoverstad Reverend Helge 8. Endlegen Even T, 338. Ingebretsen Eric 39. Ingebretsen Got 81 250. Ingebretsen Lucas 292. Ingusland Ersten 281. Inman Mrs. C.E. 145. Inman John 135. Isakson Guru 208. Isham Chauncey 167. Iverson Captain 41. Iverson Catherine 58. Iverson Haver 47. Iverson Lars Meadows 372. Iverson Lewis 248. Iverson Ole 248. Iverson of Georgia, Senator 41. Jacobson, Reverend A 870, 369, 370. Jacobson Anders 205. Jacobson Henry, Mrs. 207. Jacobson Ole 8 300, 301. Jacobson John 163. Jacobson Peter 285. Jansen Eric 74. Jeglum Lars 366. Jellerviken Haver 120. Jensen Captain 96. Jensvald Huvel 214. Germo Marie L 113. Jevny Olgi 368. Johannessen Johans 156, 158, 160. Johnson Andrew 231. Johnson Offen 231. Johnson Bard 95, 231. Johnson Barold 261. Johnson David 232. Johnson Elif 303. Johnson Finger 364. Johnson George 4756. Johnson G. Germund C. Kaasa. Johnson Ingeborg 179. Johnson Isaac 202. Johnson John 231. Johnson John A 227. Johnson John E 308. Johnson J.W. 8 282. Johnson Lars 348. Johnson Michael 343, 344. Johnson Nels 369 C. Kaasa. Johnson Ole 4754. Johnson Ovc. Johnson Esther. Johnson Siver 203, 302. Johnson Thomas 40. Johnson, Taurus, 357. Joan Ole, 334. Jones, John Paul, 40. Jones, Milo, 135. Jordgrev Kittel, 294. Jewel, Reverend E.P., 306. Juve, Nut A, 83, 244, 245, 246. Jaeger, Nut, 365. Joranlian, Terald, 213. Jorlian, C. Joranlian. Jorder, Nils L., 100. Kaasa Gjermund O, 222. Kaasa Gjermund Johnson, 120, 121, 158, 369. Kaasa Genzo C. Olsen. Kaasa Georgian, 272. Kaasa Kittel O, 272. Kaasa Nils Johnson, 120, 158, 285. Kaasa Ole, 235, 272. Kaasa Thor O, 186, 235, 272, 274. Kosny Jacob, 295. Kalberlon Kasarine, 39. Kalared Burgett N, 130. Kasberg Reverend K.A., 8, 187, 261, 263. Carney Philip, 167. Keen Andrew, 42. Kirkejord Thor H, 128, 134, 137. Kirkejord Torsten H, 128, 130. Kittelson Levi, 259, 262. Kittelson Ole, 300. Kittelsland Ole T, 363. Kjanas Ole, 120. Kjila Sven, 197. Kjolin Haver, 260. Kjosvik Hans J, 338. Kleva Johans, 273. Cleophas Haver, 217. Cleophas Nud, 217. Klevmon Helling, 213. Klomset Sven S, 281. Klov Lars, 295. Nit Rognald J, 307. Knudsen Gullik, 141, 142. Knudsen Tolef, 282. Knutsen Springen, Gunder, 146. Knutsen Mikkel, 338. Knutsen Oliver, 57. Kalskit Mitchell, 343. Kalsrud Eric, 217. Kosa Ann, 291. Kossin John, 281. Kostvet Aslak, 243. Kostvet Haver, 252, 253. Kravik Haver, 187, 261, 263. Kravik Larsi, 263. Christensen Nut, 143. Christian Roman 4, King of Denmark, 35. Kroken Matthias H, 281. Kroken Ole H, 120. Krostu Reverend Gigi, 8. Kvale Reverend OJ, 8. Kvamoden Nils 9, 300. Kvarma Esther K, 207, 209. Kvarma Kolbein, 209. Kvarv Lever, 218. Kvarv Tideman, 218. Kvalv C. Anderson. Kvendelin Lars, 179, 180. Kvendelin Nils, 181. Kvisterud Nud S, 283, 340, 341. Kvisterud Ole, 340. Laughlin Matthew, 157. Land Elef, 371. Land Lars, 371. Landeman Thomas J, 188. Landsverk Johan, 278, 279. Landsverk Ole, 279. Landsverk Petter J, 278. Langeland Nud, 48, 93, 97, 112, 157, 284, 335, 336, 348. Langeland Melina, 112. Langeland Nils P, 97, 99, 101, 110, 112. Langeland Dr. Peter, 285. Langemer Lars, 342. Langetag Anders, 335. Larson Bendik, 373. Larson, Eric. Larson, Reverend G.A. 8. Larson, Georgiana, 46. Larson, Gunder, 134. Larson, Håkon, 349. Larson, Ivar, 372. Larson, Johan, 95, 231. Larson, John, 285. Larson, Nud. Larson, I. Jalen, Lars, 45, 46, 49, 50, 60, 76, 91. Larson, Mrs. Louis O, 132. Larson, Mary, 148, 303. Larson, Ole, 309. Larson, Sarah, 47. Larson, Svend, 204. Lodgen, G. C. Springen. Lodgen, Trond, 373. Lawrence, Ole, 349. Lawson, Larson, Canute, 232. Lawson, Ivar, 112, 232, 237. Lawson, Victor F., 113. Lee, Andrew E., 185. Lee, Christian, 238. Lee, Eric, 185. Lee, Johan, 350. Lee, Lars J., 295. Lee, Olaslack. Ladle, Anfin, 149. Lekvald, Ole S., 366. Leland, Brynjolf, 310. Lenaz, O.O., 259. Lenvik, Ole, 347. Leah John, 298. Leah Ole, 294, 298. Leah Mathias, 295. Lai Anders N., 182, 183, 184. Lai Brainold L., 207. Lai Håkon, 308, 310. Lai Johans, 276. Lai Larzo, 207, 208. Lai N.A. 8, 150, 183. Leon Bjorn, 294. Leon Henrik, 309. Leon Lars, 173. Leon Lever, 343. Leon Tone, 244. Liar Nut O, 260, 261. Liar Lars, 173. Liar Ole, 174. Lillebeek Hans, 303. Lillebeek Kari, 302. Lima Simon, 47. Lindelian Nut J, 343. Lo Ole, 312. Lofthus Olive Oumlaut, 95. Loner Haver N, 120. Laman Andrew A, 368. Laman O.A., 368, 371. Luzin John S. S.R., 373. Luzin John S. J.R., 373. Loth Svein K., 95, 231. Lovin Johan M., 307. Lovin Petter M., 307. Lund Ivar, 343. Lund Paul, 261. Lund Svend L., 312. Lund Christian, 149. Lund Gullik, 292. Lund Gunder H., 291. Lund Haver A., 292. Lund Osmund, 243, 252. Lundin Anders, 343. Lunsider Anders, 213. Lunsideren Ersten, 215. Luraz Havero, 120, 158, 311. Luraz John N., 68, 70, 120, 158, 167, 222, 241, 242, 249. Luraz Nut N., 120, 158. Luraz Nils J., 249. Luraz Torger O. Umlaut, 120, 158. Liebig Bertha, 214. Liebig Johans, 214. Lidvo Nud, 117, 126, 149. Lidvo Nils, 126, 149. Lidvo Ole, 117, 126, 149. Lidvo Ranver, 235, 236. Lice Gilbert C., 368. Lysenstone Haver L., 163. Locken Hans, 286. Locken Ole, 286. Locken Peter, 286. Locken Tyke H, 286. Lawnflock Haver T, 120. Lawning Amund, 353. Lawning Gertrud, 352. Makastad Helge H, 352. Makastad Amund Helgesen, Hillesen, 95 351 352. Makastad Torgels C. Newton. Manum Tor, 343. Marin Gunnald K, 281. Marin Sonder N, 278. Madland Thomas, 46, 54, 56, 57, 58. Mant Gunnar T, 82, 246, 247. Mans Martha, 39. Marco Abraham, 41, 42. Marset Peter C, 58. Mason C.M., 295. Master Nils E., 251. Matheson Haver, 295. Matheson Helge, 120. Moisset Petter J, 100. Mayhew W.M., M. 166. Meadows C. Iverson. Mega Arden Kristen, 217. Melaz Kristen L, 267. Melaz Christie, 227, 268. Melaz Johannes K, 269. Melaz Mons L, 267. Melaz Ole A, 269, 270. Melaz Mrs. Ole, 312. Melland Helge, 203. Melland Ersten G, 278. Melland Harold, 303. Meanies Ole O, 69, 70, 81, 310. Midbow Terald E, 260. Midbone Anders, 213. Midbone Eric G, 110, 111. Midbone Gunder G, 111. Midthis Svein L, 100. Milben Hans A, 290. Mileston Haver O. Mills Dennis, 137. Mitchell Franklin, 137. Mitchell John S. 58. Mo Olivel, 234. Modem Haver, 287. Modem Thav, 208. Moe Petter H, 260. Mojan Kari G, 228. Moland Kittel. Molly John E, 120, 163. Monstetter Ragnhilde, 307. Monson Mons, 373. Monk Jens, 3536. Munson Henry, 356. Murray William S. Migstu Gullick O, 211, 212. Migstu Ole, 212. Mia Gudbrand, 128, 130. Mia Jens G, 128, 130, 132. Mia Ole, 278. Myron Ole, 284. Mia Keskog Edland, 277. Mia Keskog Ole, 277. Moan Lars J, 182. Morkvald Bjorn G, 186. Morkvald Ole H, 186. Nas Nut K, 332. Narum Nels H, 281, 282. Narvarud Sivert I, 159. Narvig Ingebrigt Larsen, 52, 53, 114. Natesta D, Henry 8, 132. Natastad Anston, 84, 108, 110, 116, 118, 127, 132, 133, 138, 205, 227. Natastad Charles, 132. Natastad Eliza, 131. Natastad James, 132. Natastad Nud, 132. Natastad Ole, 67, 84, 102, 108, 109, 110, 116, 127, 132, 133, 135, 205. Netterhagen Eric, 213. Netterhagen Johans, 214. Nelson Odd, 197. Nelson Carey, 55, 56, 58. Nelson Christ, 193. Nelson Grow, 144, 145. Nelson Mrs. Gustav, 134. Nelson Mrs. Ingeborg, 296. Nelson Injur, 58, 151. Nelson Era, 59. Nelson Joachim, 373. Nelson Mrs. Julia, 235. Nelson Newt, 297. Nelson Breck, Lars, 346, 349. Nelson Martha, 58. Nelson Nels, 58. Nelson Nils, 193. Nelson Peter, 59. Nelson Peter, 235. Nelson Petersi, 58. Nelson T, 128, 134. Nelson TT, 134. Ness Haver, 217. Ness Mons, 345. Newhouse Sinihis. Newton TM, 8, 352, 353. Nicholson Henry, 233. Nicholson John G, 233. Nilsson Ole, 292. Nilsson FO, 76. Nilsson Haver, 92. Nilsson Hermo, 162, 278, 279, 280, 347. Nilsson Nels, 279. Nilsson Prof. Spain, 67, 256. Nilsson Thorstein, 205. Nierison Kittel, 237. Nissen Haver, 281. Norman Cleese, 63. Norman Hans, 36. Nordbo Johan, 52, 122, 153. Nordbo Harold, 294. Nordbo Hans, 294. Nordby Reverend J.S. Nordfossum, Lars, 213. Nordgarden, G. German T. Nordvig Anders, 100, 112. Nordvig Ingebrigt, 101. Nor G. Gertrud, 256. Nor Grow, 256. Nor Lars, 185. Nor Nud, 185. Nor Ole, 185. Nor Siebjorn, 185. Nor Torquay, 185, 255. Norman Sibikas. Nubru, even 109. New Metal Anders H, 273. New Metal Andra H, 273. Nummeland Ole, 282, 298. Nihus Kittel, 128, 130, 206, 208. Nihus Christopher, 128, 130, 134, 137, 208. Nihus Olsi, 206, 208. Nair Bard, 152, 233. Nies Peter, 298. Niset Odni, 246. Niset Ingebrigt, 309. Niset Jens J, 309, 311, 312. Niset Johans J, 309, 311. Niset John J, 309. Niset Ole E, 246. Niseth Gunder K, 300. Nishog C. Wilson, 207. Nistastu Esmunde, 253. Norstellian Christine, 214. Norstellian Ole, 214. Norstellian Svend, 302. Nostered Margit, 140. A Fertile Hermando, 305. Almsted Benson C, 59. Almsted Charles B, 59. Almsted George, 58. Ollie's John, 333. Allstatter Burgett, 163. Allstatter Guro, 188. Olsen As, 284. Olsen Amger, 130. Olsen Bora. Olsen Christian, 52, 57. Olsen Christie, 148. Olsen Christopher, 287. Olsen Eilif, 338. Olsen Ellen, 113. Olsen Gudbrand, 206. Olsen Ingeborg, 284. Olsen James W., 59. Olsen Jens, 235, 272. Olsen John T., 287. Olsen Lars, 45, 46, 54, 109. Olsen Leif, 344. Olsen Nils, 192. Olsen Olaf, 349. Olsen Olti, 92. Olsen Ol Vendelbo, 269, 270. Olsen Amund, 192. Olsen Portersea, 59. Olsen Salve, 373. Olsen Soren L, 59. Olsen Thorsten C. Bjalland. Olsen Taste, 291. Amli Mikkel, 368, 371. Amelstad Harold, 213. Amitstarsikeren, Johans, 214. Ansgard Ol, 218. Opdal Nut, 369, 371. Opsal Gundersea, 292. Opsal John C., 291. Opsal Nils, 292. Orsland Canute, 118. Orsland Halleck, 118. Orsland Harry B., 118. Ortsland Anna M., 359. Orbital Ol J., 274. Osmond Mrs. Austin, 93, 355. Osmond Merman A., 94. Osmondson Herman, 355. Osmundson Isabella, 154. Osaldson Bertel, 364. Overholt Nils J., 301. Overson Frank, 283. Overson Ol C. Hockham. Overvind Captain, 260. Overstrud Eric, 218. Posk Alexander, 43. Patterson Torgen, 147. Paulson Huvel, 148. Paulson Zacharias, 42. Pedersen Gunald, 282. Pedersen Guro, 312. Pearson Klang, 44, 46, 48, 49, 53, 55, 62, 101, 117, 125, 190, 191, 239. Pearson Samuel, 92. Person C., 193. Person Georgiana, 46. Peterson Frank, 43. Peterson Mrs. Holger, 365. Peterson John, 360. Peterson Nels, 349. Peterson OP, 78. Pond Daniel, 167. Pratt Oscar H., 137. Prentice John, 167. Prestigard Nils, 143. Prewes Reverend A.C., 338. Pudicasa Chrisen, 297. Quala Johannes J., 285. Quale Ellen T., 312. Quale Ivor P., 369. Quale John J., 368. Quam Hans H., 333. Quamin Islak E., 312. Quamin Ol L., 312. Ramlo Terald. Ramstad Helge, 364. Rastall Abel, 166. Rierson Johan R., 86, 87. Rierson Ol, 192. Rienke Abraham, 39. Rikva Lars D., 149, 150, 181, 199, 271. Rick Reverend L.S.J., 337, 338. Rick Esther S., 335. Rice J.G., 372. Richie Will F., 59. Richie William W., 59. Rickalson Lars, 115. Rhyme Henrik, 217. Rhyme Tolef, 217. Reinden Kittel, 243, 244. Rio Eric V., 271. Rio Nut T., 295. Rio Torstein, 296, 297. Rissetter Håken, 354. Rissetter Lars, 352, 353. Robertson David, 167. Roe Ann, 242, 248. Roe Hans, 297. Roe Hellick, 248. Roe Nut H., 154, 162, 167, 241, 242, 243, 248. Roe Nils, 217. Roan Guttorm, 217. Roan Ole 217. Rogd Jacob O 354. Rockney Nut E 152, 200, 271. Ram Bjorn O 260. Ramorin Esther I 305. Ronv Brynjolf 152, 200, 233. Rosholt Haver 297. Rosholt Jacob 297. Ross Mrs. Eric 240. Rossettle Daniel S 46 56 59 90. Rossettle Johan S 90. Rossettle Oves 90. Rosalind Amund 100 177. Rosalind Esther E 100. Rostad Christopher 147. Rostad Lars 148. Roswall Ingebret 286. Rasoino Petter 120. Rothnam Ole I 366. Rokshan Aslak B 187. Rokshan Richard B 187. Ru John 192. Ru John N 110. Ru Kittel 365. Ru Thorstein 192, 197. Ru Thorstein T 125. Ru Mrs. Thorstein T 192, 197. Ru Taasen Thompson 340. Thorstein Thorson Ru, see above. Rustad Abraham 364. Rustad Aslak 217. Rust Mikkel 217. Rund Haver 214. Rund Kittel O 219. Rund Margit 219. Rig Haver SR 360. Rinning Reverend Jens 107. Rinning Ole 85 100 102 103 107 118 122 199 283. Roysland Tollif 282 298. Ralj Donant 264. Roningen Abraham K 260. Roningen Anders Jacobsen 281. Roningen Eric K 260. Roningen Torbjorn K 260. Rost Arn 343. Rost Lars 139 213. Roth Lars T 152 200 233. Roth Nils 62 95 231 236. Roths Torbjer 231. Samenstatter Gunhild 188. Sagdalen 218. St. John Samuel 136. Sacrisson Simon 295. Salveson Engelbrit 297. Salveson Haver 297. Sampson Samuel 8 337. Sandinger Endra P 371. Sand Joe 276. Sandon Embrigt. Sandon Ole 364. Sanderson Eric 219. Sanderson Ole 280. Sando Ole 217. Sandsberg Andreas 69. Sandsberg Gudmund 51 57 69 70. Sandsberg Marie 51. Saw Gullake T 171 200 233 264. Saw Kalbin O 101 113. Saw Lars 200. Saw Styack O 101 113 264. Saw Torstein 200 233. Savig Eric J 92. Savig Ingeborg 92. Savik Ann B 178. Savik Eric 177 178 179. Savik John 178. Sheldal Lars 360. Sheldal Rasmus 360. Sherdalin Ole 265. Skofdet Mrs. Martin 132. Seb Henrik E 7892. Sime Anfin J 266 267 270. Sime Nils T 267 270. Selsang Nilzo 312. Selsang Ole 268. Selsang OP 252. Selsang Thorstein T 268 311. Severts Lewis, 207. Severtson LFG, 236. Severtson Ole, 207. Shelby Haver, 338. Sherburn John Henry, 40, 41. Sherping Kristen, 312. Sherping per 312. Shipley Ole, 207. Sigurdsson Helge, 163. Simerson Simon, 70. Simon Nutt, 219. Simons William G., 167. Simonson Andrew, 125, 191, 192. Simonson Tolef, 369, 371. Estjersen Ole, 295. Esjutvit Ole, 341. Skallen Ole, 217. Scare Havero, 285. Scary J.H., 287. Skarshog Ingbrett, 364. Skavlum Bessie, 145. Skavlum Eric, 128. Skavlum Gullik, 143, 144. Skavlum Haver L, 9, 143, 145, 146, 205. Skavlum Kari, 143. Skavlum Lars H., 141, 143, 144, 145, 206. Skavlum Ole, 143. Skavlum Paul H., 143, 145, 206. Skay Lars G., 100, 175. Skinrud Eric O., 343. Skipnes Anders J., 290. Eskjurv Nut S., 285, 287. Eskjurvim Petter Davidson, 152, 199, 200, 201, 202, 232. Skofstad Johannes E., 159. Skogen Christian O., 342. Skogen Nils, 342. Scotland Torpy, 371. Skult Ole, 345. Scuttle Ole, 208. Scuttle Thorbjorn, 337, 338. Sletin Islak R, 301. Slind Ole Simelas OA. Slogvig Jacob A, 47, 55, 57, 84, 128, 193, 196, 197. Slogvig Nud A, 47, 55, 56, 61, 62, 63, 84, 91, 97, 111, 125, 192, 197. Slian Eric E., 208. Smeby Hovel, 214. Smeby Ole, 215. Smed C. Siver Johnson. Smedsrud and Jebret, 302. Smedsrud Johans E., 302. Smedsrud Matthias, 302. Smehagen Johans, 302. Smekasa Anders, 281. Smetbach Niels O., 186. Smith John G., 181. Smithback Tor E., 259. Solemn John E., 216. Solemn Nud E., 216. Solheim Anna, 182. Salvi Eric, 341. Sondel Lena, 207. Sand Ole, 364. Sanv Mads, 152, 200, 233. Sapelind Ole, 193. Spanum Catherine. Spanum Torti, 340. Spears Robert, 168. Spilda Lars, 234. Spillum Elling, 286. Spillum Hendrik, 286. Spillum Mikkel, 286. Spillum Ole, 286. Springen Gullik, 141, 142, 206. Stabik Clement T., 147, 209, 222. Stabik Helen, 209. Stabik Narv, 149. Stabik Torsten K.O., 147. Stadham Andrew O., 273. Stadham Johanna, 276. Stadham Ole, 273. Stake Arnke, 366. Stausbraten Clement L., 261. Stausbraten Haver, 261. Stam Elling, 345. Stangeland Andrew 4754, 118. Steen Severine Catherine 107. Steengerd Ole N 305. Steensland Halla 349. Steen Ivar J 307. Steen Johans 47. Stuart Samuel T 166. Still John 42, 43. Stockeberg Susanna 39. Stondal Bjorn A 254, 283. Stordak Gunnall 141, 142, 146, 148, 211. Stordak Haver 129, 211. Stordak Ng 211. Stordak Nud 211. Stordak Ole 211. Storlag Ole O 366. Storley Ole O 281. Strandskongen Barrel J 260. Stub Hanse 287. Stubberud Haver J 260. Stundal Esgero 307. Sub Hiejo 263. Sunbo Gunlake T 245. Sund G Gjermund K 172, 173. Sunv Malein 203. Sunv Nils 203. Svalstuen Gunlake O 338. Svalstuen Nud 85, 159. Svartskuren Karl 257. Svartskuren Petter L 256, 261. Svensrud Gullik 341. Svimbil Thorke 110, 111. Svinili Eric 120. Swerge Petter H 291. Salabaka G Gertrudo 186. Ser Estger M 236. Cedar Ingebrigt 129. Sogel Andrea 289. Sogel Ann 289. Sogel Johan 289. Sogel Karen 289. Sogel Kari 289. Sogel Ole I 289. Sorum Andreas 214. Sorum Bertha 215. Sorum Soren 213, 363, 365. Sotholt Amandes 281. Sotholt Soren S 281. Taasinge Andreasen 42. Talexen Lars 94, 192, 193, 197. Tamnes Chrisen. Tangen Mary 134. Tangen Petter A 224. Tasker Daniel 137. Tastad Elias 4576. Tajan Dr. K M 228. Tajan Lars J 301. Tajan Ole C 312. Taesberg Nut H 248, 254. Tellefsen Charlie C 263. Tellefsen Tolefsen K Jostolf 260, 263. Tenold Ole O 273. Tenold Ole P 274. Tessman Hans 192. Tessman Peter 192. Tessman William 192. Thomason Osmond 92. Thompson Gullik Seesaw. Thompson Hans 290. Thompson Helge 159. Thompson John 341. Thompson K. Thompson Nels 296. Thompson Paul 360. Thompson Sarah 58. Thompson Thomas 290. Thompson Thomas A 96 114. Thompson TG 234. Thompson Tor 203. Thompson Oyen 4754. Thorgrimson Jacob. Thornton Ben 360. Thorson Thompson Nels 45 55 56 59 62. Thorson Paul 373. Thorstad Ann 260. Thronson Nils 371. Thun John 369. Tistal Ole 273. Tolifsjord John 120. Tolifsjord Ole 120. Tolefsen Anna 208. Tolefsen Gunnuf 344. Tolefsen Hans 338. Tollefsen Ole, 344. Tollefsen Sivert, 147. Tollefsen Tons, 204 208. Tollefsrud Christian H, 70. Tollefsrud Christopher H, 302. Tollefsrud Hallgrim L. Tollefsrud Hans C, 70 213 215. Tollefsrud Hans H, 302. Tollefsrud Huvel 302. Tollefsrud Johans H, 302. Tollefsrud Ole Monson 302 303. Tollefsrud Ballenby, Tollef 217. Torbla Lars 234. Torgerson Ole 347 348 349. Torgerson Petter 286. Torreson Halstein 94 231 234 357. Torreson Taurus 357. Torstensen Jacob 301. Torstensen Niels 335. Torstensen Ole 301. Torstensen Torsten 301. Tistensen Ole 371. Torvald Anders O 276. Trame Kjetil 272. Trame Nut 272. Trame Ole 272. Trame Thavke 272. Train Olo 208. Travet Olk 81 82 83 85 243 252 269. Trostum Henrik H 217. Trostum Ingeborg 217. Trostum Nud 217. Tuft Hermund N C Hermo Nilsson. Tuft Nels C Nilsson. Tuft Sven 129. Turkup Haver E 366. Tutland Osmond 356. Tuttle Albert 137. Tuttle Charles 137. Tuttle Henry 137. Tivet Torger T 342. Tivate Christen J 293. Tivedo Gunnar 234. Tivedo Hans 281 282. Tverberg Hans P 249 250. Tverberg John P 249. Tivat Nut G 338. Tigum Ingebrigt L 332. Tyrabakken Nut G 218. Tisland Nut K 355. Tyvang Gluz P 260. Tarum Jens T 307. Tarum Torger J 307. Tomersteigen Anders J 224. Tomersteigen Johans 312. Tomersteigen Olive 312. Tomersteigen Peter 312. Ulen Hans 220 298. Uliber Tostein 261. Ullensiger Askild 213. Ulsak Aslak 217. Ulven Ester 199 200 201 233. Unda Britha 202. Unda Eric 202. Unda Ole 154 202 265. Unda Petter J 153 199 200 201 222 233 265. Anonius Gustav 297. Erland Arn 152. Vala Gunder H 293. Valder Hans 96 114. Vale Anders 300. Vale Arvg 293. Vale Hans A C Hans Arvesen. Vale John 291 300. Vale Olj 291 300. Valkasa Haver 294. Val Lars 364. Val Ole 363. Val Ole H 143 363. Val Sigrid P 133. Valon Petter H 338. Vampime Nils 234. Vanderbilt Jan A 37. Vanderbilt Commodore 37. Vanderweer Jacob 42. Vange Ingebrigt N 273. Vange Ole 273. Vangen Anna Marie H 307. Vangen, Ivar H., 266, 306, 338. Vangsness, Esther S., 333. Van Sunt, Clees, 36. Vasberg, Bjorn T., 251. Vaduame, Helge, 92. V. Olti, 218. Vedfold, Gunder, 207, 209. Vedfold, Olev, 209. V. Herman T., 305. Vegli, Nils O., 206. Vehis, Jens P., 185. Venaz, Gile, 271. Vest, Thorbjorn, 100. Vestreim, Kolbein, 182. Vistrimo, Christian L., 300. Vetlehuso, Anna, 44. Veti, Anders K., 359. Vibito, Georgian A. Nilsson, 293. Vic Anders C. Week. Vic Ann, 348. Vic Guttorm T., 246. Vic Johan C. Week. Vic Torbjorn G., 246, 283. Vic Schnils, 182. Vindedal, Joseph J., 307. Vindag, Gunnel O., 172, 174, 177, 180, 185, 189, 256. Vindag Hellik, 180, 181. Vindag Nutto, 179, 180. Vinge Arn Anderson, 151, 199, 200, 201, 203, 233, 304. Vinge Martha, 151. Vald John, 373. Vigli Nils O., 143. Verhog Hans, 215. Verkin Ole I, 267. Veet Eli K., 264. Veet Hala, 100. Vitarud Nudar, 208. Wagli C. Vegli. Wait Guro, 287. Wait Reuben, 287. Waller Ivor, 90. Waller Tolef, 298. Warner H.L., 137. Warner Milton S., 137. Washington George, 42. Weaver Griswold, 137. Week Andrew, 198, 199, 234, 350. Week John O., 198, 199, 234, 350. Weeks Weir S., 356, 357. Wens Petter, 373. Wheeler John, 167, 249. Wigeland Andrew, 281. Wigeland Arentz, 281, 282. Wigeland G.A., 235. Wicko Nilzo, 218. Willerup C.B., 78. William Hans, 193. Williams Mrs. Julia K., 151. Wilson Edwin O., 207. Wing John, 360. Wittenberg Jens, 39. Wold Siver, 366. Wright John, 151. Igor Lars, 150. Itribo Ole H., 188. Itrelli Eric J., 307, 308. Itrelli Ivor I., 307, 308. Erdegard Anders S., 305. Erdegarden Gunhild, 139, 146, 206. Erdegarden Jari, 144. Erdvin Peter L., 334. Uri Eric, 192. Urian Tolefo, 287. Urison Ole, 192. Earlman Esther S., 268, 270. Ersterbro Mikkel K., 307. Ervribo Anders S., 305. Transcriber's note. In footnote 201 on p. 218, the sentence, "He was born in 1823 in 1905, was corrupted. The subject died in 1905. There are several footnotes which are referred to more than once, 47 and 85. These may be errors, but are retained. On p. 313, the words "at the homestead near West Koshkonong" are repeated and have been removed. On p. 269, the reference to footnote 277 was misprinted as 227 and has been corrected. On P319, the references to notes 347-349 appear out of order, following, rather than preceding, notes 350 and 351 on P318. The numbering has been retained, though the footnotes, all moved to the end of the registry covered by these pages, appear in numerical order. On P322, the reference to footnote 356 is missing from the text, but perhaps belongs to the entry for Ole Lærdal. The index has a number of editorial issues. Minor inconsistencies of punctuation are corrected without mention here. There are a number of entries which lack page references. Some can be found in the text and are provided in the list below. The index itself is given as printed. Berg Ingebrigt P. 373 as Ingbrigtberg, Johnson Esther P. 333, Thompson K.P. 291 as Karen Thompson, Johnson Esther P. 333, Larson Eric P. 333, Larson Nud P. 343, Mileston Haver O.P. 342, Moland Kittle P. 344, Murray William S. P. 348 as William S. Murray. Nordgarden G. German T. P. 281, Nordby Reverend J. S. P. 8, Spanum Catherine P. 334. There are a number of other index entries which have no page reference and which do not appear in the text with these spellings. Anderson Eric A., Bjorduft Ragnhild, Bjorduft Thorgrim O., Blegeberg Gunder H. Gullberg Arn Haverson Taliv Hoym Christopher T., Lee Ole Slack Olsen Bora Thorgrimson Jacob, Tolifsrud Halgrim L., Ramlo Terald Sandin Imbrigt, Tamnes Chrisen. The entry for Hallen refers us to Ove C. Johnson, for which there is no page number and no obvious mention in the text under either name. The surname Sane in the index is an error and refers to the name Saw. It has been corrected. Proper names are sometimes inconsistent, especially between the text and footnotes. The I ligature is variously spelled I or I. Unless there are many instances of a given spelling, both are retained, e.g., Spelleman versus Spellemand. The letter O sometimes is printed without the diaeresis as O. Where the preponderance of instances of a given name are correct, the offender has been corrected. In the registry in Chapter 37, the surnames for Petter Amund Egdetvedt and Kolbein Torkeldsen Egdetvedt differ. The spelling of the former, based on other texts, would seem to be correct, but both are retained. Inconsistencies in punctuation, especially in chapter titles, have been resolved without further mention. The following table describes additional issues and the resolution of each. N25P, S-Vig removed. N93 had completed a log cabin added. N115, Build Magazine removed. N127, Ayan Prairie transposed. N157, Koshkong corrected. N317, Scandinavian immigration corrected. P25, meteorological sick. P29, considerable line break repetition removed. P35, but it is possible line break repetition removed. P36, Norwegian sick. P38, ecclesiastically added. P60, immigration, line break repetition removed. P117, Group O emigrants corrected. P142, surname sick, appears once elsewhere as surname. P150, in the same county corrected. P170, on the marshes line break repetition removed. P183, who needed their help, added. P212, born in Rolog in 1821 added. P223, beating line break omission added. P230, one Outh of Hodgesund corrected. P239, Efglestad corrected. P240, one Illinois added. P242, on their hunts corrected. P250, he came in a party line break repetition removed. P254, Bjorn A. Standal removed. P255 later, was name corrected. P283, Koshkong added. P296, suffer distress, added. P306, certificate added. P309, to I've here corrected. P326, Haslow corrected. P370, reverend removed. p. 371, Wisconsin corrected. p. 397, Indigen corrected. End of the Project Gutenberg ebook of a history of Norwegian immigration to the United States, from the earliest beginning down to the year 1848, by George Tobias Flom.